Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. My name is Jim Hart, and I'm the Chair of the Toronto Police Services Board. Welcome to this virtual meeting of the Board. Although this meeting is taking place virtually, we acknowledge that the land we're on as we hold this meeting is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. It is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. The Board also acknowledges that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed by the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaties, signed by multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. Members, are there any declarations of interest on the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none, I'll now turn the meeting over to the Board's Executive Director, Mr. Teschner, who will go over this meeting's logistics. Mr. Teschner?
Thank you, Chair Hart, and thank you to everyone who has joined this virtual meeting. Please note that this meeting, as always, is being live streamed on the Toronto Police Service YouTube account and will be available there at the conclusion of this meeting. On the line, we have Chair Jim Hart, Vice Chair Councillor Francis Nunziata, Mayor John Tory, Councillor Michael Ford, Member Marie Molinar, Member Ainsworth Morgan, and Member Lisa Kostakis, as well as members of our board office staff. On the line, we also have Chief Raymer, his command team, members of the service, and of course, a welcome to members of the public. We have individuals who have registered to make deputations on our agenda items. As always, following our regular meeting process, deputations will be heard prior to the item being discussed and voted on by board members. When it comes time to do a deputation, those who have registered will be brought into the call by our colleague, Du Buchanan-Gissert, and as always, deputants will speak, followed by an opportunity for board members to ask them questions. Chair Hart, back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Teschner. Before we begin today's meeting, on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank Ms. Marie Molinar, who attends her last meeting with us today. I'd like to take this opportunity to pay tribute to Marie for her significant contributions and dedication as a member of the Toronto Police Services Board. Marie became part of the board as a provincial appointee in March 2012, joining us as an extremely impressive leader in the public and not-for-profit sectors, working as a senior public servant both provincially and federally. Reappointed by the province for 3-year terms in 2015 and 2018, Marie has brought a consistently powerful voice in the areas of transparency, governance, and accountability. During her time on the board, Marie has been an active and tireless member, committing many hours, not only to board meetings, but also participating on numerous subcommittees and working groups. Marie was also our vice chair from 2019, taking a leadership role on the board, championing issues of accessibility to the public, human rights, and enhanced oversight. Marie asks the tough questions and raises critical issues, advocating to include wide-ranging perspectives in our deliberations and decision-making, including marginalized individuals and communities, and those who have traditionally not been at our table, recognizing that sometimes those are the very voices that we need to hear from. From budget to body-worn cameras, from carding to modernization, throughout her time here, Marie has always ensured that the complex issues and challenges we face must always include the perspective of the community in a concrete and meaningful way. It is in the role of vice chair that I've had the pleasure to really get to know Marie and her commitment not only to transformation, but to community. Working with Marie has been a pleasure from day one. You've provided me with insight into issues, and you've helped me immensely in my role as chair. But more than that, Marie, your thoughtful and collegial approach makes people listen to your perspectives. You've offered to remain committed to the work of the board, even from the sidelines, by offering to be a resource and someone to bounce ideas off. An offer that I greatly appreciate, and one that I would surely take you up on. Marie, on behalf of the board, I want to thank you for your strong leadership, your sincere passion, and your incredible commitment to the Toronto Police Service Board and to our community. We'll miss your dedication, your insight, your compassion, and your ability to weave kindness and humor into even the most serious and complex of discussions. Your legacy will be here to remind us that community is and always must remain our motivation, our driving force, and our raison d'etre. For this, you have our sincere gratitude. I understand that Mayor Tory would like to say a few words.
Well, you know, Chair, it's difficult to follow that because I think you spoke every word I would have wanted to speak. So I'll simply say that I endorse every single word you just said in terms of the just the dedication, the collegiality, the ability to deal with serious issues in a way that, yes, was very serious and very committed, but at the same time, you know, collegial in that sense that we have to all work together and, of course, work with the service. It's a very unusual job. I don't think people, you know, would fully comprehend the oversight job together with the job of sort of getting the best from the service. And I, you know, Marie, I say to people often when they talk about the board, and I don't violate any proprieties in terms of talking about what we talk about, but just about the people, you have been, you know, among many that served this role, but you've been first as a conscience of the board, as a conscience of the board in the context of probably the single most important thing we always all agree we have to do, which is to make sure we build up, and in some cases build back up trust in policing. And the degree to which you spoke frankly, but again constructively and in a collegial manner at all times about issues that have to do with equity, that have to do with race and policing, that have to do with you know, that series of issues in particular, but that not limited to that by any means. I mean, you were involved in every single aspect over all those years. 9 years is remarkable of the work of the board. And so I just want to say thank you. You know, I'm actually a believer in term limits for politicians as well as for board directors and companies, and I guess that must mean police board people too. But sometimes you think it's a shame that you sort of serve for a period of time like 9 years and that we can't have the continued access as a board member to your wisdom and your experience. But in this case, you've offered to help, and I'm sure your phone will ring. And I want to say one more thing, which is that, you know, you've had to deal with some other challenges that have you know, come in front of you in your life. And notwithstanding that, no matter where you were, no matter what you were experiencing, you got on the phone, and sometimes I didn't even know what time it was or where you were, and you were dealing with other things, but you were always there for us. And so I just want to say thank you. This is a great public service that you've done, and you were a public servant in your professional life, and you understand public service, I think, better than, you know, most people, and that's been exemplified by your service to the police board. So thank you very much. We will really dearly miss you. And you know, people say that at these departure you know, kind of commemorations, but in your case, we really will. It's going to be a big shoes to fill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Tory. Vice Chair Nunziata, I understand you'd like to say a few words.
Yes, thank you, Jim. And I would like to take this opportunity to add some comments about Marie Molnar on the occasion of her last meeting. I recently took over from Marie as Vice Chair of the Police Services Board, and these were definitely big shoes to fill, as during her term, Marie developed a strong and renowned reputation as a passionate advocate for the community and someone who worked diligently to strengthen oversight and enhance accountability. As we know, the board's role is to act as the connection between the police and the public, and in everything she has done as a board member, Marie has demonstrated her genuine commitment to this principle in all her thoughts and through all her actions. During her term, Marie has been a vocal and passionate voice on the board, actively engaged in a number of significant issues like the budget process and human rights, always seeking new and creative ways to reach out to all segments in our community, especially young people. I join the chair and others as we honor Marie for her important contributions and extraordinary dedication as a member of the Toronto Police Services Board for the vital work she has done to ensure that community voices are heard loudly and clearly at the board table. Thank you, Marie.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Chief Raymer, I understand you would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to thank Ms. Molnar for her longstanding dedication to serving the public and for doing so on this board. We haven't had much time to work directly together, but I do know that her work in council has been respected and well received by the members of the Toronto Police Service. Ms. Molnar has a deep commitment to transparency, accountability, and communications, and that has been evident during her tenure on this board. She has always challenged our service to do more, to go further, and to do better in these areas, and we respect her for that. She has made firm challenges to us, but always in a professional and positive manner that is appreciated by our members who try every day to do their best for this city. Marie, thank you for your service and for your contributions to the Toronto Police Service. We wish you the very best in the future. And I personally want to thank you for your guidance and support.
Thank you, Chief. And finally, Mr. Teschner, I know you worked very closely with Marie in her capacity as Vice Chair in particular, and you'd like to say a few closing words. Mr. Teschner?
Thank you, Chair Hart. There's a piece of art behind me that has a quote from a well-known Jewish rabbi, and it says, "You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it." When people leave roles that they've undertaken for a while, we often speak about their legacy. So Marie, what is the legacy that you've left for all of us to continue? And for me, and I think members of our staff team here that support the board every day, it's an emphasis on channeling voices, all voices. It's a resolute determination that in all we do, whether it's policy making, budget formulation, human resource decision making, or public engagement, the diverse range of voices from the public that we serve, the many voices from members of the Toronto Police Service, the voices of Chief in Command, the voices of your fellow board members, and the voices of the professional civil service that support the board, that there's a forum for them to be heard. No matter whose voice, or how some may feel it doesn't represent theirs, you have been a champion for creating new forums to ensure that there is a place and a space for everybody to have their say. The result over your 9 years has been remarkable. These voices have influenced the development of new police governance policy. They've informed budget decision-making. They have been brought to tables to influence decision-making. Speaking for the small but mighty staff team, and as a fellow longtime public civil servant, you have always recognized the talents and commitment of those who serve the public every day, engaging them and ensuring that we are all able to put our skills and abilities to use to have maximum positive impact on those that we serve. And importantly, you've done this for your husband, whose illness makes the opportunities to express all the more significant. And I've admired how you've made it this chapter of your life's work to make sure that his voice is heard, and through his art, that it will be everlasting. Put simply, but without compromising the significance of these simple words, your work over 9 years has ensured that all these voices have found a space, and through their expression have made a difference. So on behalf of this small group here in the board office, thank you for all you have done to enhance police governance and to emphasize the real lives at the center of the decision-making, and for inculcating in all of us a desire to channel always the voices of our city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Teschner. And Marie, before I ask you to say a few words, I have a token of appreciation that I would like to present to you now on behalf of the board and the board office staff. Doobie, can you find a way to show what we're presenting Marie, please? I'll give everybody a minute to take a look at it. Okay, thank you, Doobie. Marie, I will now turn it over to you for your comments.
Wow. My mother would say, this is the time that you just wave goodbye and exit quickly. That was overwhelming, and the token that you have prepared is just so perfect. I'm deeply, deeply grateful. So let me just do a voice check-in. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Wonderful. So thank you all. That was the unexpected tribute, and I'm deeply grateful. And thank you for all of your support over the years. And thank you for mentioning my husband, Kevin. That is my passion, is my work to keep him healthy and happy as we navigate the diseases of Parkinson's and Lewy body dementia. So I'm very, very grateful. I'm going to take a few minutes, and it will be about 9 minutes, to walk you through some of my reflections. So I want to begin by honoring my very first boss, who was Claire Lewis. And let me just get my screen going here. Okay. So Claire Lewis was my first government boss. He was the police complaints commissioner who established the Special Investigations Unit, and he died last October. And there wasn't much fanfare because of the pandemic, but he was known for his unwavering ethic, and he never, ever flinched around difficult choices. He had backbone and taught me more about police oversight than anyone. And he also taught me, and I'll come back to this, about the importance of working with the community. His highest compliment was to say to those he truly believed in, "You are good people." So today I want to reflect upon the goodness I've observed during my tenure on the board. But before I do that, a bit of reckoning. Like many of you, I learned about policing from my parents, in my case, immigrant parents. My father grew up in fascist Spain, and that's where the Brigada, which was the secret police, would be very present, and he taught me to never make eye contact with the police officer. My mother, on the other hand, she was born in Southern Ireland, in Waterford, where leprechauns live and beautiful crystal is still blown. And she taught me, if I was ever lost in a small town in Ireland, to always ask the body for directions. So I grew up knowing about the good, the bad, and the ugly in policing. So my parents and I, and my partner and I, Kevin, are parents of two wonderful, strong-willed children, a son and a daughter. And when I began my term on this board, they were teenagers. And when you live in a big city, you're concerned as a parent about what might happen as your children test their wings, which ours did. We worried about encounters with the police, which, in the case of our son, happened. And to his credit, he agrees that for the most part, his encounters with the police were warranted. Unfortunately, that has not been the case for far too many good people. So for the record, I'm going to briefly review the headlines of a turbulent history of policing across North America. Over-policing, racial profiling, excessive use of force, failure to protect members of the gay community, failure to protect vulnerable members of the community, failure to protect people in crisis. Each of these headlines reflects brutal truths, and I know that there are headlines that none of us are proud of. But today I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful because I think we're at a point in history when I can actually wish out loud that this recent past will remain exactly that, the past. So with headlines like those, where do I look for the goodness? Well, it's not difficult. I only needed to look in our very own backyard to the top ranking officer of the Toronto Police Service, Chief Jim Raymer. Under your leadership, the service has begun to seriously reckon with its past. And what you've accomplished in the past 7 months has been nothing short of remarkable. You've built on the work of past chiefs and past boards, and in doing so, you've really set the stage for your successor to truly succeed. The board members, the service members, community members, even the police union respect you. There's a hopeful charge of change in the air. And I know that your daughter, who's a new TPS recruit, is proud of you, and she will be even prouder of your legacy. I want to speak briefly to the newest recruits. I'm mindful that you have worked hard to get this job. Consider yourself to have been selected from amongst the very, very best. Yours is a complex responsibility. Your job, your work has never been more scrutinized, and you must hold yourself and your peers to the absolute highest standards. Also, and this is very significant, also you must learn to ask for help. Over 9 years, I have been repeatedly saddened, as we all have, by the stories of officers who did not get the help they needed in time. When you're unhappy, it affects everything you do and everyone around you. And as police officers, you carry weapons, so their lives are at stake. On a lighter note, if you watch the new CBC policing show, Pretty Hard Cases, I hope each of you aspire to be like Detective Kelly Duff. She's tough, tender, she's smart, she's ethical. She's a cop who will not protect bad apples, at least not so far. That could all change because she is a TV character. You, members of the service, are not TV characters. You are public servants. And you know more than most that your reputation can evaporate in the blink of an eye, or in these days, in the recording of a video, because the world is watching. There will always be headlines. And because I, too, have worked for decades as a public servant, I know the sense of accomplishment one feels when doing a job to the best of one's ability, even if the praise is faint or sometimes non-existent. So uniform and civilian members, take pride as you continue to do your job with compassion, with honor, and with integrity, regardless of the headlines. I'm so very privileged to have worked in your midst. You are good people. Turning now to the board. Wow, it's been a long ride, with a few ride-alongs, actually. There's no doubt that the board is so much healthier today than when I joined. Like my kids, this board has matured. Gone are the days of the media coverage about squabbles between board members and the chief. And in fact, we're leading the way for other police boards across the country, which has been particularly evident during the pandemic, because thanks to the exceptional team of board staff, we moved online at the outset a year ago now. No mean feat. Go, board staff, go. I'm so very proud of the board's work on two fronts. I'm proud about the way we are now getting real work done with the chief and his team. I'm proud that we are developing a track record of long-term productive relationships with the community. I do leave you with one very specific observation. There must always be a healthy distance between the board and the police. There can be trust and there should be collaboration. However, as I say to my children, I am your parent, not your friend, because tough choices need to be made. Going forward, this board has a unique opportunity to redesign old institutions and to eradicate the bad habits they have taught all of us. So to our critics, I say, keep criticizing and do tell the world when we're getting it right. We're not there yet, but we are learning. And to my board colleagues and board staff, I have learned so much and continue to learn from each of you. I leave knowing that you are good people who are able to make the difficult decisions that will make Toronto a safer place. I now turn to the community. Over my 4 decades working inside the system, I've learned that we're only as good as the outsiders we listen to. I'm so very grateful to the deputants who have taken time out of their busy days, their very busy days, to tell us what they think about policing in Toronto. You are thoughtful and often understandably angry because lives are at stake. Thank you for beginning to trust us enough to partner on major issues such as crisis response to mental health calls and anti-Black racism. Your words have had a deeply humanizing effect. You need to know that your deputations have significantly influenced how the board and the service are now operating. Years ago, I had the privilege of witnessing meetings between Claire Lewis and a red carpet of community elders. To name a few: Bromley Armstrong, Zanena Akande, Dudley Laws, Akua Benjamin, Charlie Roach, Sharona Hall, Lennox Farrell. I express my deepest gratitude to you, members of the community, for following in their footsteps and for giving meaning to the term persevering in the face of adversity. I know that you're exhausted and that you have no choice but to keep at it because lives, Black lives in particular, are at risk. Do not let up. Help us get it right. I thank you. And I know Claire Lewis would most certainly agree. You are good people. So on that note, I thank you for listening to my swan song lecture. And let's get on with the meeting. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Marie. You're certainly going to be missed by all of us. I'd now like to take the opportunity. Unfortunately, we have two going aways today. So the second one is Deputy Chief Shauna Coxon. I'd like to take the opportunity now to congratulate Deputy Coxon, as this is her last board meeting, and an excellent opportunity to recognize her impressive achievements in an extraordinary career with the Toronto Police Service, while wishing her well in an exciting new opportunity that lies ahead. Deputy Chief Coxon's career with our organization has been diverse and remarkable. Her last position in charge of the Human Resources Command pillar provided an opportunity for Deputy Coxon as a committed agent of culture change to put into action the critical principles of modernization that she was so instrumental in helping to develop. Appointed as Deputy Chief in 2017, Deputy Coxon's diverse career has included positions in vice, youth crime, child abuse, sex crimes, human rights, professional standards, community response, and intelligence analysis, consistently demonstrating a genuine commitment to a progressive and dynamic approach to policing. A champion for transformation and modernization for the Toronto Police Service, who has led a number of successful enterprise-wide innovation projects. Deputy Coxon has played a pivotal role as a bright and innovative leader committed to developing meaningful partnerships with communities. The board is grateful for the incredible contributions that Deputy Coxon has made to the service, including helping to evolve culture and informing its innovative approach to community safety. The board wishes her the very best as she pursues this extremely important opportunity as part of the global policing community. This appointment that Deputy Coxon is about to take is a remarkable testament to her excellent leadership skills and the high esteem with which she's held, both locally and internationally. In the professional world, it is the greatest form of flattery when an executive in your organization is asked to take on a significant role elsewhere. Deputy Coxon, I'm sure you'll agree that the years of service, opportunity, and mentorship that you have received with the Toronto Police Service have set the stage for this next phase of your career. We know that for you, policing is very much a global endeavor, an international partnership with law enforcement, and this is the next step in your successful career, and it's wholly representative of your philosophy. Deputy Coxon, as you prepare to take on this exceedingly important position in the esteemed Ngarda Sheohana, I want to thank you on behalf of the board for all that you have done to enrich our organization over your career, to move us forward in so many different areas, to drive continuous innovation, to reform the way in which we deliver police services to our communities, and to encourage a deeper and more meaningful connection with communities. Please know that you'll be greatly missed by the board, the service, and your colleagues, and importantly, communities across Toronto with which you have partnered. Deputy Coxon, your pivotal role in the modernization and transformation of our organization has made you a policing leader internationally. And we can't wait to see what happens in the next stage of your career. Thank you so much, Deputy Coxon. I understand that Mayor Tory would like to say a few words.
Well, again, Mr. Chair, I think we're going to have to reverse the speaking order because, you know, you said it so well, as you always do. And Deputy Coxon, I just want to say that, you know, Ireland is no ordinary country for a lot of people who just have such affection and around the world. And the Garda, I know something about it, is no ordinary police service. And so really to follow on the theme that Chair Jim Hart just was following, for you to be selected by them, and I'm sure they take the same care in doing that as we're doing in finding chiefs and deputy chiefs for the Toronto Police Service, is a huge personal tribute to you, but also I hope, as Chair Hart said as well, a tribute to the mentorship and experience you've had with the Toronto Police Service. You know, if you think about what we really have to do in order to bring about change, and you know, I'm one of those who sees the need for change in policing as just part of the evolution that you have to have in a whole bunch of different areas of life as we move forward, but that we have a particularly acute need to bring about changes here because there's been, over time, perhaps some overlooking of the need for that, or some even some resistance at times. You have been dealing in the last period of time with the most fundamental part of that, because at the end of the day, you know, in our book this time we have this whole list of procedures. It goes on for pages and pages and pages, and they're all very interesting, and they're all, you know, well thought through and so forth. But it's not so much about procedures; it's about people, and the work that you've done, especially in recent times, about starting to change the culture, to create a culture that is perhaps more in line with what we're doing in the 21st century, what we have to do, what's expected of us. And by us, I mean those of us who have to serve and protect the community. And that's not confined to police, but the work you've been doing on the police side of that to bring about culture change and to help make sure people are better equipped to deal with the realities of the 21st century has been nothing less than remarkable. Your support for the transformation agenda, which is something that is crucial to the restoration of trust in policing, which had eroded in some parts of the community, is also crucial. So I just want to say congratulations. You know, what a tribute to, you know, be picked from anywhere they could have picked somebody in the world, all the different people involved in policing. The Garda picked you. And I think that's a tribute to you. And don't forget, there's always a light in the window. A home is always home. And so if you want to come back here to the city of Toronto, which I trust is a city that you love, and make a contribution in some way, whether it's in policing or otherwise, you just have to let us know, because you'd be most welcome here, as I'm sure you will be anyway on a personal basis, but you'd be most welcome here to resume what has been an outstanding career in policing and in public service. And I thank you very much for all of your efforts and for all of your dedication, and wish you very well in your new assignment.
Thank you, Mayor Tory. Vice Chair Nunziata, I understand you'd like to say a few words. I think you're on mute, Vice Chair.
Am I okay? Okay, sorry. I would also like to add some remarks as we congratulate Deputy Coxon on her impressive new appointment and thank her for the extraordinary contributions to the Toronto Police Service and to communities across the city. Deputy Coxon, through your years of dedicated and excellent service, you have firmly established yourself as an inspiring and progressive leader who has played a key role in the modernization of our organization, moving it forward with innovation, professionalism, and genuine commitment to providing the very best police services to the public. Over the years, you have worked diligently to assist victims of crime, and you have continuously promoted the importance of learning and education. You will be missed by many here, but we look forward to seeing the tremendous impact you will undoubtedly have on the international policing community, and we wish you all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Chief Raymer, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very happy to address the board and the public today to say farewell to Deputy Chief of Police Shauna Coxon. I speak for all members of the Toronto Police Service when I say we are very proud of her accomplishments and her new position as Deputy Commissioner at Ireland's National Police and Security Service. Throughout her 24-year career with the Toronto Police Service, she has been a true leader to our members, both uniform and civilian, in every rank and in every unit. Deputy Coxon has excelled in modernizing many elements of our service and will bring her extensive knowledge and experience to Dublin to continue working on police transformation. Her new role is clearly a testament to her policing skills, her professionalism, and her dedication to public service. I'm confident that her new responsibilities at Garda will give her a depth of experience that, combined with her work here at the Toronto Police Service, will mean there is no position in policing beyond her reach. While this may be her last Toronto Police Services board meeting, I know that she will always call Toronto home, so this is not goodbye, but rather an offer of sincere best wishes to a much respected colleague and friend. Deputy Coxon's last day with our service is tomorrow, and I invite everyone to join me in wishing her safe travels and every future success. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chief. Deputy Coxon, would you like to say a few words?
Now I know how Vice Chair Mulliner felt, because that was really overwhelming, and that's why I kept my camera off. What I just wanted to say today is many of you have heard my story. My mom was a teenager when she had me, and we grew up together, the two of us, because I met my dad about 2 years ago, and we grew up. We didn't have much, but we had each other. And I can tell you, I never met anyone in the community where I grew up that was a lawyer or a doctor. I didn't know what that was until I was a little bit older in terms of my childhood. I can tell you that every encounter I had with police was negative. I never ever thought I would join the police service. It's probably the last place I ever thought I would wound up. And all of that really shaped how I saw this job in policing. I joined this job by accident. A friend of mine convinced me to come out with her to the trials because she wanted to become a police officer. I specifically came with her to talk her out of it. And through a series of interesting circumstances over the next couple of months, they wound up hiring me, thankfully, and not her, although her dream was always to become a teacher, and that is what she is now, and I'm still proud of her. So I am what Malcolm Gladwell calls an outlier. I never thought that I would come from the roots that I have to where I am now. And I think it's a testament to what is possible in the city of Toronto. I am always looking at the opportunities that were afforded me and how I came to have them, and why so many people still do not, and what that looks like in different communities. And it really fuels my passion for policing, as well as my passion for modernizing policing and the way that that looks in terms of the city of Toronto. I still think this is the greatest city on earth. I won't say that when I get to Dublin, but it will always be home. And the idea that I've been able to come from where I've come from to be here is, quite frankly, it still amazes me. I still wonder at times how it's possible and how it's happened. And I have people ask me, how did you get here? And I'm not sure. It's been one decision after another that seems to have been the right one. And of course, the incredible support I got from my mom and from my grandmother and grandfather and the rest of my family. I just want to share a really brief story because it still resonates with me. I was in a housing project years ago. I was brand new on the job, and I still remember the person I was working with. We were dealing with a group of youth, really youth that were challenging us, which happens so frequently when we're out and about on patrol. And my partner said to me, oh, that person's a future court card, meaning in the future, that person will be arrested. And a court card is what we punch in when we would go to court to get paid. And I said, or your future partner, right? Because you don't know who or what people are going to be. All things are possible. And I shared my story then, and I continue to share it now to change the hearts and minds of people around me. And the other thing I'll say in that is that experience, as negative as it was an anomaly. It's not something I've seen a lot. But the struggles that we face both in building trust in community mirror the struggles that we have internally. And so I know there are many, many people who want to see things improve and get better. And in policing, I've certainly met some of the best people I've ever met in my life, people who want to make a difference, people who want to change things in the city. And so I'm just so grateful for that. And so for those who are interested in getting up and making a better city, making a better police service, and just doing the right thing every day, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for the opportunity and the experience. And thank you all for the many wonderful things you had to say today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deputy, for those comments. You'll be missed. Thanks so very much. Okay, members, I'll now move forward onto the agenda, looking for member holds and approvals. So we'll start with item number 1, which is the confirmation of minutes from the virtual public meeting held on February 25th, 2021. That item is held down for a deputation. Item number 2 is a presentation of awards to members of the Toronto Police Service. That's held down for the presentation. Item number 3 is a presentation regarding the Toronto Police Gun and Gang Strategy, held down for the presentation as well as deputations. Item number 4, another presentation by Environics regarding the public engagement for the Chief of Police selection process. That's held down for the presentation. Item number 5 is a special constable appointments March 2021. Can I have a motion to approve item number 5? Councillor Ford, could I have a seconder? Vice Chair, all in favor? Any opposed? Item number 5 is carried. Item number 6 is a request for funds annual community events 2021. Can I have a motion to approve item number 6? Motion to approve. Ms. Kostakis, could I have a seconder? Mr. Morgan, all in favor? Any opposed? Item 6 carries. Item number 7 is the Toronto Police Service Board nominee to the Ontario Association of Police Service Boards, Board of Directors, and request for special funds for the 2021 virtual conference. We received a written-only deputation from Mr. Collin. We thank him for that. Can I have a motion to approve item number 7? Motion to approve. Ms. Kostakis, could I have a seconder? Vice Chair, all in favor? Any opposed? Item number 7 carries. Item number 8, organizational structure report. 2 parts to it. 8.1, organizational chart. Can I have a motion to approve item 8.1, the organizational chart? Motion to approve. Ms. Kostakis, seconder. Councillor Ford, all in favor? Any opposed? 8.1 carries, and 8.2, Information Technology Command, ITC Structure, Phase 1. A motion to receive 8.2. A motion to receive. Councillor Ford, could I have a seconder? Seconder. Ms. Kostakis, all in favor? Any opposed? Item number 8 carries. Item number 9 is the Annual Report 2020, use of CEWs. We have a written deputation from Ms. Corrado. I thank her for her written deputation. Can I have a motion to receive item number 9? Does anyone wish to hold it? Motion to receive or hold?
Mr. Chair, I'm back. Sorry. I might just ask you a question or two when the time comes. If I could, very briefly, when we get to that item, if I can. Thank you.
Yep. Meritorious holding item number 9. Item number 10 is the Annual Report, Labor Relations Council and Legal Indemnification. Cumulative legal costs from January 1 to December 31st, 2020. Could I have a motion to receive item number 10? Motion to receive, Councillor Ford. Could I have a seconder? Seconder. Vice Chair, all in favor? Any opposed? Item 10 carries. Item number 11, Toronto Police Service Audit and Quality Assurance Annual Report. Item to receive, item number 11. Motion to receive, Ms. Kostakis, a seconder. Mr. Morgan, all in favor? Any opposed? Item number 11 carries. Item number 12, which is the Annual Report write-off of uncollectible accounts receivable balances, January 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2020. A motion to receive item number 12. Motion to receive, Mayor Tory. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Ford, all in favor? Any opposed? Item 12 carries. Item number 13 is the Annual Report 2021 filing of Toronto Police Service procedures. We have a couple of deputations on that one, so item 13 is held. Item 14, Annual Report 2020 activities and expenditures of community consultative groups. We have deputations on item 14, that's held down. Item 15 is the Annual Report 2020 secondary activities. Can I have a motion to receive item number 15?
Sorry, Chair Hart, can you hold that down, please?
Yes.
I just have a few
item
questions.
Number 15 is yes, Mr. Morgan's holding item number 15. Item number 16 is a semi-annual report, Toronto Police Service Board Special Fund unaudited statements from July to December 2020. A motion to receive item 16. Motion to receive. Mayor Tory, a seconder. Vice Chair, all in favor? Any opposed? Item 16 carries. Item number 17, we have 17, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're all Chief Administrative Investigative reports. I'll take them in total. Does anyone wish to hold any of 17.1 to 17.6? Any of them? No. Could I have a motion to receive item number 17 in its entirety? Motion to receive, Ms. Kostakis. A seconder, please. Someone to second. Mayor Tory, all in favor? Any opposed? Item number 17 carries. Now move back to the top of the agenda, which is item number 1, which is the minutes from our virtual public meeting held on February the 25th. And we have Derek as a deputant. Doobie, whenever you're ready.
Derek, you should receive a prompt now.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, I'm just going to start my timer here. So in last month's minutes, it says, Chief Raymer delivered a response to Mr. Chris Langenfeld's deputation, providing details concerning the approach taken by the service with respect to enforcement of pandemic-related matters in the context of the public health emergency the pandemic presents. One of the things that stuck out with me that Chief Raymer said was, the criminal law indeed provides penalties for behavior that endangers the lives and the safety of the people, and in the right circumstances, we have laid those charges and we will continue to do so. So I want Chief Raymer to remember he said that while he thinks about why he's wearing that mask right now, while he breathes in his own bacteria that he first breathes into the mask. So in Chief Raymer's own words, if the criminal law indeed provides penalties for behavior that endangers the lives and the safety of the people, and in the right circumstances, we have laid charges and we will continue to do so. And based on the evidence that I have provided on the dangers of mask wearing to this board over the last few months, associated with breathing in bacteria and virus that becomes trapped in a mask, then I have an actual deputation to make. I appoint Chief Raymer and the Toronto Police to act as the trustee for me in this matter, and I direct them with the instructions to charge Dr. Eileen Davila with one of those penalties he mentioned in the criminal code for behavior, in this case, decisions that endangers the lives and the safety of the people, when she decided to recommend.
Derek, it's Jim Hart. I'm going to hold your time right now just for a second. You know, I rarely, if ever, cut you off, and I give you extreme latitude in your comments. But I just want to say something now because I feel I have to. Now, the board's procedural bylaw requires that deputants be respectful and keep their comments focused on agenda items. And frankly, it's improper to make derogatory comments about identifiable individuals, whether they're with the Toronto Police Service or otherwise. This is not the forum for giving direction to the chief with respect to any specific operations or laying of charges. So if you have any issues of a criminal nature whatsoever, this is not the forum to do it. If you want to go to your local division and lay a complaint against anyone, feel free to do so. But this is a forum for talking about policy matters. And as you know, I give you tons of latitude in that regard. But we cannot be talking about specific individuals, most particularly with regard to criminal matters or laying charges. There are other venues for doing that. So Derek, I've stopped your time. I'm not going to let you lose any time for my remarks, and I'm going to restart it. But I would appreciate it if you would move on. You can talk about masks all you want. I've given you latitude in that regard before. But the laying of charges and individuals, if you go back there again, I'm going to have to stop you, Derek. And you know I'm very lenient with you. So I appreciate you following my direction. Thank you.
Well, first of all, Chair Hart, objection. One of the fundamental freedoms we have is the freedom of expression. I mean, I've gone over that. I don't know if you remember me talking about that while Andy Pringle was the chair. And this is absolutely the forum. Again, like me and Chris Langenfeld have pointed out to this board that you people use the word deputation, but you don't even know what the definition of it is properly. I am actually making a deputation right now. You know, if you guys decide at some point in the future to put a proper definition for deputation on the board's bylaws definition section, well, that would be great. But until then, this is absolutely the forum. This is where we bring stuff up like this. I don't know what the derogatory comment was. What was the derogatory comment that I made, Chair Hart?
Carry on, Derek. I'll speak at the end if I need to.
Carry on. Okay, like respectfully, Chair Hart, you're not qualified to give me orders with saying carry on like that. So we'll just, unless you rebut anything, I didn't make any derogatory comments. So if you can't provide an example, then I'll just continue like, where do I stand with my time anyways?
You have about 2 minutes and 40 seconds left.
You know, that's one of the things with these meetings. Like Councillor Cressy cut someone off for the stupidest reason at the Board of Health yesterday. And because I'm over the phone, you guys have the power to just hang up on me. So what these meetings, doing them remotely, effectively do is negate the right to protest that used to happen down at the board headquarters there, Toronto Police building there. So, you know, like, I didn't expect you to cut me off like this, but to me, it's not fair that the Toronto Police pick on people like Chris Guy, Adam Skelly, Lamont Daig, Kellyanne Wolf, and they're just like letting Dr. DeVille escape. But if, you know, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to walk into 53 Division? The place has been closed for a year, Chair Hart. You realize that, right? Like, who's going to take my complaint at 53 Division if it's closed? I mean, you're a great guy and all, but like what you've done by interrupting me has violated my freedom of expression. But you said I could continue, right? Did Councillor Cressy hang up on me? Is this thing working?
I'm not hanging up on you. I can hear you loud and clear, Derek. You've got 45 seconds left.
45 seconds. Yeah, 45 seconds left, and I wasted all this time because I got cut off. So, okay, Chief Raymer has the idea, right? So why don't in the future, with my remaining time, you guys put a proper definition for deputation in your bylaws definition section. I'll send it to you, Chair Hart. It's in the Canadian Oxford Dictionary. It's appointing people. Okay? You guys are trustees. We're the beneficiaries. You know, you probably don't know anything about trust law, but Professor Donovan Waters says in all essential matters, trustees are to be directed. You got 2 lawyers on the board there and a bunch surrounding you, and they'll tell you that they can look it up themselves. They'll tell you I'm right. So anyways, Chief Raymer got the idea.
Thanks for your comments, Derek. That's your time anyway. Any questions for Derek? Seeing none. Once again, thanks for taking the time, Derek.
You too, Chair Hart.
Could I have a motion to approve the minutes? Vice Chair, seconder. Ms. Kostakis, all in favor? Any opposed? The minutes are carried. Item number 2 is a presentation of awards to members of the Toronto Police Service. I'd just like to make a couple of comments before we start that. Today we're making a number of important award presentations. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we're not able to hold our usual award ceremonies, but this in no way should diminish the importance that we attach to honoring the excellent work of our service members. Today we'll be awarding the Medal of Health Excellence Awards, which recognizes Mental Health Excellence Awards, I think I misspoke, which recognizes those who demonstrate excellence, compassion, and respect in their interactions with members of the community who are experiencing mental illness. I should note that my co-chairs on the board's Mental Health and Addictions Advisory Panel, Jennifer Chambers and Steve Lurie, were also involved in the selection of this year's recipients, and I thank them for their invaluable perspective and input. In addition, today we're making an award presentation for the annual Robert Qualtrough Award, and I understand that his family is watching these proceedings, and I thank them for that. This award is granted to those who demonstrate excellence and leadership in promoting police-community partnerships. As many here are aware, Robert Qualtrough was an extremely beloved and renowned police officer with the Toronto Police Service, who was particularly committed to working in partnership with the public to achieve community safety objectives. It's an honor to have his family on the line today listening and watching at home and joining us as we make this important presentation. There's no doubt that the incredible legacy of Robert Qualtrough continues to live on in the Toronto Police Service and the community that he was so proud to serve. I'd now like to turn the meeting over to Acting Staff Superintendent Chris Kirkpatrick to read the stories and the names of the recipients.
Thank you, Chair. In the Mental Health Excellence Award, the first group is Police Constables Nathan Jardine and Corey Krajewski of 11 Division. On Thursday, August the 15th, 2019, Constables Nate Jardine and Corey Krajewski attended an unknown trouble in the St. Clarence Avenue area. The information provided to the officers was that there was a female in crisis and that she was on a roof. Once on scene, the officers located the female who was sitting on the edge of an overhang on the roof. The overhang did not appear to be in good shape and was unable to withstand the weight that it was currently holding. Despite the structural issues with the overhang, the officers had a real concern for the female's safety. The officers made their way onto the overhang to help the female in crisis. While speaking to the female, the officers showed great empathy, compassion, and were able to build a rapport. After the female felt she could trust the officers, she eventually agreed to come inside, and the officers assisted her in getting off the edge safely and back onto solid ground. If it were not for the brave, courageous, and selfless actions of these officers, the female in question would have sustained serious injury. Police Constables Jardine and Krajewski are commended for their actions as they maintained their composure during a very tense and volatile situation, placing the well-being of a stranger ahead of their own. The second award is to Police Constables Noah Brinder and David Lee of 53 Division. On April 20th, 2020, officers from 53 Division responded to an unknown trouble radio call in the area of Bloor Street East and Rosedale Valley Road. A male was observed holding the outside railing of the Glen Road pedestrian bridge. The officers arrived on scene and observed the person leaning off the bridge while clinging to the outside of the railing with one hand. The male appeared to be in crisis and was visibly upset and stated that he did not wish to live anymore. The officers began to de-escalate the situation. They were able to make contact with the male and begin negotiations. The officers remained calm and developed a good rapport with the individual. The officers' use of tactical communications and de-escalation techniques provided and were highly effective, and they were able to negotiate and assist the male to safety. The male was apprehended under the Mental Health Act and transported to hospital to be assessed, where it was learned that this individual suffered from PTSD and depression. The decisive and exemplary actions of these officers saved the person's life, and these officers should be commended for their actions. The third award goes to Police Constables Jamie Robinson and Aaron Wong of 13 Division. On Monday, April the 13th, 2020, the officers from 13 Division responded to a call for an unknown trouble in the area of Dufferin Street and Beltline Trail. Multiple citizens had made calls to police to advise that a female was seen standing on the ledge of the bridge over Dufferin Street. All of the callers indicated that it appeared that the female was in distress and was going to jump off the bridge into the traffic below. Police Constable Jamie Robinson and Aaron Wong were two of the first units to arrive on scene and immediately made their way to the bridge to speak with the female. It became abundantly clear that the female was in crisis and did require assistance. Constable Robinson calmly engaged her in conversation and was able to build a strong rapport. He remained professional and spoke with compassion and empathy, and because of his actions, they were able to connect with her, which resulted in her calming down and engaging in the conversation with the officers. Ultimately, this connection allowed the officers to slowly approach the female and offer their hands in assistance. The female willingly took their offer and allowed them to assist her off the ledge of the bridge and to safety. As the officers helped her down onto the bridge, members of the public began a heartfelt round of applause. This incident was very much in the public eye, despite the fact that this was a very high-stress situation Both officers remembered their training and applied it effectively to resolve the situation with the best possible outcome. These officers should be commended on a job well done. That concludes the Mental Excellence Awards, Chair.
Thank you very much. What an impressive list of accomplishments. To the winners of this year's Mental Health Excellence Award, PCs Jardine, Krzyzewski, Ringer, Lee, Robinson, Wong. On behalf of the board, I want to extend my sincere and deep congratulations to each and every one of you in receiving this prestigious award. Dealing effectively and empathetically with those experiencing mental health issues in our community is a significant priority for the board. And it's our honor to pay tribute to each and every one of you for your extraordinary efforts, and particularly your clear commitment to de-escalation and your demonstrated compassion, putting others before you in each and every circumstance. You are quick thinking, you remain calm, you created calmness, you establish rapport, you're professional, and you are kind. The successful outcomes in each and every one of these situations is attributable to each and every one of your exceptional qualities, your admirable actions, and you are extremely deserving of this honor. To this year's winner of the Robert Qualtrough Award, Detective Brian Smith, you are a most deserving recipient, embodying the critical principles that Robert Qualtrough exemplified through his career, building and strengthening community, harnessing the strength of collaboration, and above all, making our city safer for each and every one of us. Your work on expanding the innovative and successful focused situation tables throughout Toronto is a powerful tribute to Robert Qualtrough and his vision of true and meaningful community policing. Thank you so much to each and every one of you. You're truly all of our heroes. I'd like to now turn this over to Chief Raymer to say a few words. Chief?
I just want to congratulate all the officers for the tremendous work that they're doing each and every day. And these officers have exemplified precisely what our members are doing each and every day. And it's just extraordinary work, and it's a caring profession, and they've exhibited that in each of these situations that we've discussed. With respect to Detective Brian Smith, and the Robert Qualtrough Award, I just wanted to identify the very, very important work that's been done as part of the focus tables and the expansion into 31 Division now and Black Creek, and the incredible work Brian has done to lead that program and make it one of the best tables that we have in the city, with some 60 partners now working together collaboratively for community safety and well-being. And just another example of the extraordinary partnerships that we create in this city and with other agencies to contribute to community wellness. It is a terrific award, and I had worked with Bobby Qualtrough and the family, and he was an outstanding individual, and I think this award in his name is very much deserved.
Thank you, Chief. Board members, would anyone like to speak to item 2.1 or 2.2, the Mental Health Excellence Awards or the Robert Qualtrough Award? Anyone wish to speak? Board members? Ms. Kostakis.
I'd just like to echo what the chief said as well, but also just coming from the community and the nonprofit sector over the last 30 years, just the progress that has been made with the collaborative work and the multidisciplinary tables of focus that enable our communities and our other service sectors to work together more collaboratively and more effectively in serving our communities with the positive impacts is to be commended. So thank you very much to everyone, and congratulations. And Brian, we've worked together in the past too, as being part of the first focus table in Rexdale and going out to Prince Albert as well in Saskatoon when it first started in Rexdale. So thank you so, so much for all of your leadership and commitment, and keep them growing. I think this should be all over the world, and we'll get all the governments from up down supporting soon enough. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ms. Kostakis, in particular, for sharing your personal experience. Thank you very much. Mayor Tory.
I was just going to add to that. You know, I have had the chance to actually attend some focus tables. They let me do that so that I would have some sense of what was being accomplished by this. And they're remarkable places and remarkable. It's a remarkable process. But I think what people would benefit from if they had the chance I had to see this is the role that the police play there that is very different than what is often discussed. And look, some of the discussion that happens about other aspects of what police do are very important, obviously, and it's important that there be oversight of that and there be lots of discussion about that. But in this case, it is just a remarkably empathetic, a remarkably collegial, compassionate role the police play. And those stories we were told today, when I say stories, they're not stories, they are histories of things that happen every single day, where things are de-escalated and things are successfully resolved without loss of life and without tragedy. And this goes on. And unfortunately, there are other things that happen that aren't quite as good, but that these things get less attention. That's just the way of the world. So I just want to say, and mental health to me, I often say to people of all the surprises that I had in taking the job that I have, the prevalence of mental health as a factor in everything from homelessness to policing to healthcare to hospital crowding. It goes on and on. Homelessness. It is remarkable, and the work that's done here that's recognized today is important to help us get a better grip on that. So I just want to say congratulations and thank you to all those involved, including with the focus tables.
Thank you, Mayor Tory. Any other member wish to speak? Seeing none, can I have a motion to receive item 2.1 and 2.2? Both sets of awards. Ms. Kostakis, seconded by Vice Chair. All in favor? Item 2 carries. Now we'll move forward to item number 3, which is a presentation regarding the Toronto Police Gun and Gang Strategy. And I'll turn this over now to Acting Deputy Chief Myron Demkew and his team. Deputy, when you're ready. And we have deputations on this item, so the deputants know, and your deputations will follow the presentation. Thank you.
Chair, board members, thank you very much. We really appreciate the opportunity to come before you today to discuss the framework that we are using to advance our approach in regards to gun and gang activity. I'd like to start also by thanking the team that will be speaking today. Seated to my left, Inspector Dawson, second in command of our intelligence services, and Inspector Eklund, who is in charge of 55 Division, and off camera, Detective Sergeant Scott Purchase. And they have worked tirelessly over the last few weeks across the service and in collaboration with our partners to bring this presentation forward. I'm also incredibly grateful and thankful, and would be remiss if I didn't mention the benefit we had with expertise and insights provided by Louis Marsh of Zero Gun Violence Movement and Jackie Edwards, president of the Association of Black Law Enforcers, who committed to working with us along the way, and we continue to share a commitment to move forward together as this framework evolves. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Scott McKean from the Community Safety Wellbeing Unit in the city, who is doing incredible work advancing the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan for Toronto, and has also been engaged with us. While developing this framework, it became very clear there are many voices that need to be heard. And while a framework is required to guide the Toronto Police, we are truly committed to hearing all the voices. And our framework is designed to ensure that that happens in an ongoing way. We recognize the public trust, we spoke of it this morning a few times, is at the center of any solution, and that our approach to gun and gang activity has not always had the desired effect and has at times had a negative impact on public trust. This strategy framework will address the need for greater coordination and collaboration, both within the Toronto Police Service and between the Toronto Police Service, local communities, and key stakeholders, and will ensure that we align with strategic initiatives such as the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan for Toronto. What is fundamentally different about the strategy framework is that the Toronto Police has embraced a co-design approach that is engaging of community leaders, organizations, partners, and members of the public to inform this framework, and a continued commitment to engage voices from across the city and our partners as we continue to evolve in this space. To be clear, there is not one prescribed set of answers to what needs to be done to address gun and gang activities. This framework sets the stage for a coordinated, agile, and nimble approach, and commits the Toronto Police to working with communities in an enhanced and productive way that will focus our collective efforts in response to gun and gang activity in a way not done before. Very briefly, the agenda for this presentation you see before you. We're going to speak about the specific call to action that we have heard from community and review the situation as it relates to shootings. We're also going to speak about the framework, our areas of emphasis, and particularly our call for continuous improvement. We'll speak about things we're doing now and areas we're going to enhance going forward. And finally, we'll end with the discussion around metrics, timelines, and welcome an opportunity for some discussion on this framework. I believe this graphic speaks for itself. Over the last several years, we see a trend line in regards to incidents of shootings and firearms discharges that are not going in the direction we would like to see. We've traditionally viewed gun and gang activity as predominantly a police matter, and therefore requiring a predominantly police approach. And despite our best efforts, the shooting trend isn't where we want it to be. And as a result of some important reflection internally and learning with our communities and from our communities, we understand we need a different approach. So we've heard some very clear calls for action from the community, and the themes have been consistent. A greater focus on quality of policing, not quantity. Success in policing is not represented by the number of arrests, but by whether people feel safe and are safe in their communities. There's a recognized need for a greater focus on prevention and intervention so that we can get ahead of the need for apprehensions. And finally, the need for greater coordination. There's a growing call for more coordination as we gain a deeper understanding of the root causes concerning gun and gang issues. Police, community, social service, health are just some of the stakeholders that must coordinate, align, and be strategic to ensure we have the best possible community safety outcomes. And to that end, we've identified the overarching aim of our approach is the elimination of incidents of gun and gang violence in the city of Toronto. In order to drive towards that overarching aim, we've identified three strategic goals. The first area, the first goal, frankly, is, is working with communities and in coordination with communities to align with Toronto's answer or community safety well-being plan. Secondly, is to focus on enhancements that improve public trust and confidence. And thirdly, a multi-sectoral, evidence-based approach that brings a public health lens to the Toronto Police approach to gun and gang activities. Bringing a public health lens means this is a recognition that community violence has physical and mental health impacts for those who are victimized, for those who commit acts of violence, as well as their families, friends, and the communities. Addressing root causes such as poverty, discrimination, and lack of immediate supports must be part of a development of a local, sustainable response to gun and gang activity. In an effort to achieve these goals, we are looking, or as we achieve these goals, we're looking at three key outcomes. We want to see a sustained reduction of shooting incidents and gang activity year over year and measuring change within our communities. We want to see an increase in public trust and community engagement and participation with us and all our stakeholders. And a sustained effort of coordination and, most importantly, continuous improvement. We must maintain an evergreen approach that is responsive to local community needs, and this must occur in a coordinated fashion with all our stakeholders. I'll now turn it over to Inspector Dawson, who will speak about activities in prevention. Thank you.
Our neighborhood community officers are the foundation of our service's crime prevention strategy. They are co-located within our communities and build consistent and trusting relationships. They work collaboratively with the community to identify community concerns and co-develop solutions. Their positions are long-term with a minimum 3-year commitment. Importantly, they are a key conduit of information to officers throughout the service. They bring the community's perspective into our spaces. You will hear later from Inspector Eklund the very critical role neighborhood community officers play in bringing the community's voice into our crime management process. As mentioned during the awards section of this board meeting, in particular Brian Smith's receipt of the Robert Qualtrough Award, focus is another one of our important crime prevention efforts. I think the remarks by Mr. Mayor, Ms. Kostakis, and the Chief all really drive home the importance of this initiative. Focus brings community agencies together to serve individuals who present acute risk factors. It provides a targeted wraparound approach. Focus is the largest multi-agency collaboration in North America, with over 125 community agencies engaged. We will continue to support and evolve Focus while we're moving forward. Gang prevention is essential to our strategy. #Engage416 has been presented by Constable Ron Chisner in a previous board meeting. This program began by engaging the community. There were already over 30 town halls hosted, which were attended by over 1,600 community members and 50+ organizations. The incredible engagement and the insights gained have guided Engage 416. There have been 663 gang exit referrals that have been made from this program. Of the referrals received by the exit strategy, 87% of those approached have accepted the assistance offered. Without that initial contact with police, these positive outcomes would never have occurred. There are an abundance of stories, of success stories from Engage 416. In one case, as a result of a referral from a public safety response to, which I'll get into in a little bit later, a client received assistance for mental health counseling. That client surety later contacted police to ask for assistance for themselves for employment and mental health support services. Several days later, that surety reached out once again, now looking for support services for their child who was at risk of becoming gang involved. This one referral from the PSRT to the gang prevention team generated 2 more referrals and resulted in 3 people being partnered with much needed resources. As I just mentioned, the public safety response team, known as the PSRT, they are also an effective intervention tool. The PSRT is intelligence-led and coordinates with key operational units across the service, particularly the Gang Prevention Task Force. They attend shooting events and communities that have been impacted by shooting events to address potential retaliatory shootings with the goal of intervening and disrupting potential violence. They also conduct bail compliance checks on individuals with offenses on firearm offenses. These bail compliance checks provide an opportunity for the PSRT officers to refer offenders and their family members to the Gang Prevention Task Force. PSRT is provides the strong majority of referrals to our gang exit program. In one situation, officers attended an address for a bail compliance check and spoke to the offender and his mother about the referral program. The offender's mother accepted a referral for employment services for herself and youth programs for her other children. Once again, one referral generates more. Our human trafficking enforcement team is another intervention tool. They work in coordination with our gun and gang task force as there is overlap in these investigations. The human trafficking enforcement team is committed to developing and maintaining a victim-centered approach. They connect victim to resources, and that is often the very first step in human trafficking investigations. They work in partnership with many agencies such as Boost, Victim Services, Addiction and Trauma Counseling Services, and shelters. As we move forward, our enforcement strategies continue to evolve. Unlike the PSRT, the Centralized Shooting Response Team, known as the CSRT, is reactive. They investigate all shootings and discharge incidents across the city. By not having divisional borders for these teams, we eliminate internal barriers in this coordinated response. The CSRT is committed to investigative excellence, and they provide a centralized and consistent approach to shooting investigations. They are connected to all key specialized units for a coordinated, collaborative response. The CSRT has an extensive communication strategy. Senior officers and unit commanders are updated daily on all shooting incidents that occur across the city. Divisional crime management teams are updated on each shooting incident within their division. Members of the CSRT attend both crime management and community meetings to further this collaboration. As I mentioned, our enforcement continues to evolve. It is highly strategic with a focus on the most impactful and violent offenders. We are intelligence-led and community-informed. We understand the social cost and the unintended negative impacts enforcement has historically had on families and communities. Our focus is not on more arrests, but making the right arrests at the right time in the right locations. This strategy was used in Project Sunder, where 101 of the 118 arrests of serious offenders were completed prior to the takedown day. This allowed the project to conclude with minimal disruption to the community. Project Compound began with an intelligence-led investigation into one firearm that was linked to 7 shootings. By removing 11 offenders, this project provided the opportunity for a community to take back their neighborhood. The neighborhood community officers assigned to this neighborhood received significant feedback from the community in response to that project. This enforcement also has a preventative impact. We firmly believe that a number of shootings were prevented through our actions during Project Compound. Further, by strategically removing violent, impactful offenders from the community, we are actively preventing future offenses. Strategic enforcement doesn't end on the takedown day. Projects are now planned incorporating aftercare for the affected community that involves both the neighborhood community officer and community members. Inspector Eklund will now discuss the continuous improvement and coordination, which are key pillars in our strategy.
The Crime Traffic Order Management Meeting, or CTOM, is a meeting that is held weekly in each police division, bringing all sub-unit leads to the table, including the crime analyst, superintendent, and inspector. During this meeting, local crime trends are identified and discussed, and short-term and long-term strategies are put into place in order to address these issues. A short-term strategy may be as simple as deploying uniformed personnel to an area in order to deter certain types of crime, where a long-term strategy may be a robust, coordinated project such as a summer safety plan to address violent crime. These strategies must involve the community voice. A great example of this is Project Synergy, in the Lawrence Heights area, which is currently underway. This is a collaborative initiative in 32 Division, which brings together the Black Chiefs Consultative Committee, other identified community leaders, Toronto Housing, Councillor Cole's office, government and non-governmental agencies to listen, understand, and respond to both the upstream root causes of violent crime with a truly coordinated approach and not just the downstream behaviors with the application of policing resources for immediate public safety. The goal is to get the right resources and the right people at the right places at the right time to prevent and intervene. The service continues to evolve in the use of analytics to support a variety of activities from an evidence-based perspective with a strong emphasis on intervention and prevention. This includes the addition of a CTOM analytics portal that contains an automated CTOM dashboard. The overall CTOM process is further enhanced and supported by a regular morning meeting, which occurs in each division every morning. Present at these meetings are the divisional unit commander, inspector, and principal members of the crime management team. During this meeting, events of the past 24 hours are discussed and short-term plans are put into place. Due to reasons of information security, CTOMs are not open to the public. However, community voices are brought to the table through several key members of the division, including the neighborhood community officers. As Inspector Dawson mentioned, NCOs perhaps play one of the most important roles of bringing those community voices to the table, which they get from their day-to-day interactions in their neighborhoods. It is because of examples that we've discussed, such as Project Synergy, that the addition of the eCTOM model is being implemented in Q3 of 2021. Recognizing the need for organizational consistency and the sharing of best practices, this executive-led, service-wide CTOM process drives a coordinated and integrated response across all pillars of the TPS. Again, key to the success of this process will be the community voices reaching the eCTOM table, as well as the involvement and cooperation of various city and other relevant agencies. Deputy.
Yeah, I'd like to add a couple more comments as it relates to the executive crime management model that we are advancing. This is really to build on our local efforts and to bring it up to the executive table within our organization to ensure that between divisions we have the best possible coordination alignment, that we do have an opportunity to share best practices across the city, that we can allow for rapid deployment of resources. When we bring together several divisions that have overlapping issues with executive leadership guiding the discussion, it gives us an opportunity to move resources around in a much more rapid and effective way. And most importantly, to ensure that we're in alignment with our community safety well-being plan emerging out of the city, and to provide continuous follow-up and accountability that we are addressing the issues in a community-informed and collaborative, coordinated way. I'll additionally add one comment. We are presently updating our crime management procedure to reflect this framework and where the community safety well-being plan is taking us in the city. And once that update is complete, I've spoken with our chief, and we're committed to releasing that publicly so that members of the community can see the inner workings of our procedure that governs us in this space. This next slide deals with some new initiatives, specifically the Community Safety Partners Executive Team. The idea for this is inspired by the 2014 Community Safety Task Force. Councillor Nunziata, you'll recall that there was a call for formalization of strategic partnerships back then. We've also seen a recent call from the Jamaican Canadian Association for an executive group to come together and discuss a coordinated approach to gun and gang activities. And most recently, Mr. Mayor, building on the success of meetings hosted by yourself and Councillor Cole, we've recognized that when leaders come together and are willing to work together, things happen. We get things done. And this initiative is going to initially bring together executive leaders from the police service, public health, community housing, and social development in an effort to develop a platform for continued leadership engagement and coordination. all in an effort to allow for strategic alignment in a meaningful way between all of our key areas of responsibility in support of the city's community safety and well-being plan. Additionally, what you'll see is the proposed evaluation of our approach with a public health lens. This evaluation framework will be developed considering various metrics that have yet to be established with public health. We have a number of metrics you'll see later in the slide deck, but we need to meet with public health and develop a set of metrics that will help us evaluate with a public health lens. What we're trying to do is certainly measure the success of our strategy, not only by the reduction of things like shootings or the number of deaths due to gun violence, but importantly by virtue of the positive community public health outcomes that we look forward to witnessing as this framework evolves.
Our neighborhood community officers are co-located within our communities. They are constantly working towards a more familiar, consistent, and trust-based relationship with residents. They see and hear what the community goes through after a shooting event or other gang-related crime. And quite often they see the root causes of these behaviors. Because of this, they are well positioned to engage those city agencies as well as other community groups through programs like SafeTO. Once again, with our NCOs co-located, they can get the right resources and people to the right places at the right time. In the aftermath of community trauma, whether from gun violence or other events, our NCOs work with the Community Crisis Response Program. This collaborative approach is embedded in the role of the NCO. It is for these reasons we are expanding our neighborhood community officer program in up to 10 additional neighborhoods with up to 40 additional officers. The outcomes of expanding the NCO program will continue to be the improvement of public trust and confidence by being a credible, reliable, and familiar community safety partner.
Just if I may, before we leave this slide, I really want to highlight the importance of two key participants in our operational response. Neighborhood community officers, as you've heard, are the conduit. Very, very important role for us to bring the community voice into our work. And also the field intelligence officer. This is a role that coordinates our operational response across the service between commands. And their roles, both these roles, are very, very critical to our ability to provide a coordinated response that is truly community informed. So very important roles for us as we continue to evolve them, expand them, and enhance them.
Increasing member awareness of gun and gang violence trends and known risk factors of youth becoming gang involved through a coordinated platform will provide our officers with more tools to prevent and intervene before incidents happen and provide strategic enforcement when they do. As the deputy mentioned, another important role in the prevention and intervention of gun and gang violence is that of the field intelligence officer. FIOs quarterback information up and down and side to side so the right decisions are made. Acting as a liaison between divisional officers and intelligence services, the FIO coordinates intelligence information, ensuring it lands where it's needed. This is extremely important when coordinating and deploying policing resources to an area where there is information that a shooting or other gang-related crime may occur. FIOs exist in every major unit across the service, including the PSRT and CSRT, and meet together weekly to share local information. The shared information from a coordinated service-wide perspective is then returned to the local division and presented at the weekly CTOM meeting. A thorough review of the FIO program service-wide will seek to improve this role by sharing best practices and developing clear and consistent guidelines and mandates. The TPS is committed to a gap analysis to ensure an effective, efficient, and sustainable coordination and collaboration of gang prevention and intervention efforts. This gap analysis must be conducted externally to the TPS. In order to be an effective stakeholder in the prevention and intervention of gun and gang violence, we must have the ability to act quickly in order to achieve the best possible outcomes. We recognize, and more importantly understand, that opportunities to do this can be short-lived. By leveraging existing multi-sectoral programs like Focus and Gang Exiting, we can provide greater opportunities for those at risk to understand and seek alternatives to a gun and gang lifestyle. The service is currently looking at best practices and considering the need for a dedicated gun and gang specific situation table. We know that being able to provide meaningful referrals in an expedited manner is vitally important to promote community healing. As with any strategy, evaluations of effectiveness need to take place. We are committed to an independent evaluation of this strategy to identify, address, and adjust our actions and processes. As we have done in other programs, we will not wait for a final report in order to make those changes. Community-informed mid-course adjustments are expected as we move along. This will help to ensure the integrity of what we are committing to do. Lastly, we recognize that there is a need for technology in order to help our members provide referrals to the community in almost real time. Working with the service's Chief Information Officer, the TPS is committed to the development of a digitized referral process whereby an officer can offer expedited referrals to a resident while standing in their living room or sitting at their kitchen table. A digitized referral process should not only be available to victims and witnesses of crime. With the right city and community resources at our fingertips, we can better inform and enhance the bail process by advising the courts of those available resources in order to compel an alleged offender to seek those supports while on bail and to address the acute risk factors. We will work closely with the Ministry of the Attorney General to ensure these proper resources become a condition of bail, to ensure that our contributions to this conversation are meaningful, and to address concerns around the bail process in order to keep our communities safe. We have commenced research and analysis of those who are out on bail for firearms offenses. This analysis seeks to determine the effectiveness of bail, including rates of compliance and non-compliance, of bail conditions, recidivism, and what processes worked and didn't work. This analysis will continue to balance the rights of the community with those who are charged. Part of enhancing the bail program for the most serious of offenders is ensuring the impact of these activities on the community is heard during the bail process. This can be established by enhanced community engagement, utilizing new and existing partnerships. We recognize that there is a need to meet with communities to understand how the trauma is impacting their neighborhoods and to bring these lived experiences to the courtroom in a manner that is both acceptable to the community and to the courts. The TPS, in partnerships with its board, will work with all levels of government toward reforms and policy enhancement to the bail process. Deputy?
Just to add, Councillor Ford, Councillor Nunziata, you're certainly very familiar with the #Engage416 community engagement happening in our communities and what we're learning from those engagements and learning the real life impacts that gun and gang activity have on our communities and the people residing in them. And it really is to build off of some of those lessons learned that we'd like to understand the impact in a way that should the community voice want to be heard in a court proceeding, that we can find a way to bring the impact of those events and the community voice to those proceedings. And additionally, the service certainly values the board's consistent engagement on this issue and the ability to rally different levels of government to give consideration to improvements in policy and governance as we try to have a positive impact on how we address gun and gang activities. And to that end, we are going to look to provide the best evidence-based conversation to engage with the board and to move forward with government engagement as appropriate.
This slide provides a sampling of metrics that will be used to determine if we are achieving our objectives. This is by no means an exhaustive list. Although we work in alignment with other service providers, these metrics are unique to our service. In order to determine if we are achieving our goal of long-term and sustained reduction in incidents of gang activity, we will look for a reduction in shooting events and victims year over year. We will measure these changes across the city and in distinct communities. By obtaining both city and local perspectives, we will learn and adapt while determining which strategies are most successful.
In order to effectively assess if we are achieving the objective of increased trust and engagement with our communities as identified in the green section, we will be measuring our outreach, engagement, and referral efforts in each area of the city. This is where the collaborative efforts of all pillars of the TPS again come together, such as the neighborhood community officers, public safety response team, the integrated gang prevention task force, community partnerships and engagement unit, and analytics and innovation, just to name a few. If one can picture a circle made up of 3 curved arrows, the metrics in blue would be that of the 3rd arrow. It is the continuous measurement of these rubber hitting the road metrics that will lead us back to the top objectives that Inspector Dawson spoke of. These metrics will then tell us where we need to focus next as we then move through this chart as a constantly revolving wheel of new actions, measurements, and outcomes, always striving to adjust, coordinate, and improve.
And finally, a brief discussion, and I'm mindful of time, is our timelines. I would like to just identify, you'll see at the bottom, there's a number, three sets of activities expected to commence later this year. There are certainly considerations there. I just want to identify why it's noted the way it is, because we may have to go and seek funding and identify people to do that with us. So we don't have that in place. So we do expect to advance movement on those initiatives through the course of this year, but those are certainly expectations at this point that I wanted to highlight. Additionally, things like the FIO program, critical role, as I said, but we need to stage our improvements in that area when we have the executive crime management process framework being developed to ensure that we're aligning and developing the best possible enhancements to the FIO role. Additionally, as it relates to engagement with public health and evaluating with a public health lens, the metrics you saw earlier are samples of metrics the Toronto Police presently use. These are not necessarily the metrics that are going to assist in evaluating with a public health lens. And I just want to be clear about that because I want to respect the role of public health and the learnings that we will gain from their expertise when we meet and discuss what metrics are actually important. Additionally, the work being done by Scott McKean's team and our analytics folks that are looking at metrics around community safety and well-being, those are other things we need to also bring into the conversation as we develop a framework to look at this from a public health perspective. So I'd like to close off by summarizing as follows. All of us who are invested in preventing and addressing gun and gang violence have a different professional and community-based set of tools in our toolbox. The Toronto Police and our partners have used those tools with less than effective coordination and recognition that we need to share our information, our people, and our tools to be truly effective in this space. We are learning those lessons, and it remains an evolution. But what this strategy framework does is ensure that a young person in any one of our 158 communities across Toronto will be seen as a person with complex needs and allow those collectively responsible for community safety to marshal their resources in a coordinated, more effective fashion to meet the needs of the individual at the moment those needs arise. Some of the recipes for success will require more police. Sometimes it'll be more public health or community housing. But what this framework allows us to do together is align and cooperate in a new and improved way. We're now very excited to open this up for further discussion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Deputy. That was a very comprehensive overview. Before we get into discussion, I want to ask, first of all, the Chief if he has any wrap-up comments. Then we will go to deputations. Then I'll bring it back to the board for questions and speakers. So, Chief, anything before we go to deputations?
Just very quickly, I just want to thank the team for the work. There's been tremendous collaboration and a very real commitment to ensuring we're community informed. But most importantly, we're holding ourselves accountable to this framework.
Thanks very much, Chief. Doobie, I believe we have 4 deputants. Could you put on the first deputant, who I believe is Sarah Allen?
Yes, Chair. Sarah should receive a prompt from the system now to unmute. Sarah, can you hear us?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead when you're ready.
Okay. Thank you. This is Sarah Ali from the Black Community Consultative Committee, and I'm the civilian co-chair. I just want to start with my deputation a few things. Community voices, I keep hearing, are they're welcome to be heard, but reality is community voices are not welcome nor interested. It's not about feeling safe, it's about being safe. Many failed policies have come to fruition, as we know. So with that said, the voice, what we do is our table, for people who don't know, is policing issues that impact the Black community and work in conjunction with TPS board and liaison to provide constructive feedback to the TPS supervisors, commanders around the needs of the Black community that they're policing. This includes sitting or being present in other initiatives relating to community. What the reality is, when the TPS board had not reached out to the Black Community Consultative Committee amid last year's tension, as everybody knows, it speaks volume of where the Black community truly stands with TPS board. We are sitting at the table that was formed since 1987 by the TPS for making sure that dialogue and relationship are being built. Yet the action that has not been taken by the board says otherwise. We have met up with the board later on, thanks to Chief Raymer, but that's another discussion with that. We cannot go out there and speak on behalf of the Black community, claiming we need to build relationship, when we as the committee do not have it with the TPS and TPS board. The Black community is demanding to be heard and action to be taken place. We have done tremendous work throughout the last 2 years with our impact wraparound movement, which is prevention through gun violence and so on. But the reality is, with some board members felt it was unwarranted and didn't support. This was the 2019. And build the relationship with the community and the TPS through authentic transparency and respectful ways. We do want to acknowledge to thank for everyone who took part in it. The roots of anti-Black racism and systematic discrimination in Canada run deep. They are historically embedded in our society, in our culture, in our laws, and in our attitudes. They are built into our institutions and perpetuate the social and economic disparities that exist in everything from education to healthcare to housing and employment, creating the illusion, right, that there is some sort of anti-Black racism going on. BCC partnered with EdPAD Canada to bring the International Decade of People of African Descent to TPS. We have invited the board, including the mayor himself, and no one took the time to show up or send representatives. The part of the institutional decade, it actually talks about the justice system, which is what we're having this discussion, including the mental health when it comes to the African descendant community. Does this show you that they're truly, really wanting to work with the Black community? Because the elephant in the room, when it comes to gun violence, when it comes to the safety component, the biggest community that's always being affected is the Black community, or as we call it, the African descendant. Tokenism achieves the same while giving those empowered the appearance of being non-racist and even champions of diversity, because they recruit and use POC, person of color, as racialized props. This is more common after the killing of George Floyd in USA and the protests that took place worldwide. No one wants to be voiceless in a position that only glorifies their inclusion. People want opportunity that empowers them and not to turn them into figurines. Everyone wants and needs a diversity that would improve their quality of life, not just compensate for their survival. This is why many Black in position to make an impact are doing nothing in fear of reprisal or to come across as hard or too emotional. Fostering diversity in TPS isn't just by preparing a report or partnering up with so-called organizations that look like Black run. It's more than that. It's by building actual trust within the Black community, ensuring they feel included and not dismissed, by making sure funding goes to real issue that will address the issue at hand. And if we talk about the mental health with Black community, can present as early as 4 years of age, and it continues all the way into adulthood. Within the Black community, there are many obstacles when it comes to addressing mental health issues. Cultural, social, and many personal factors impact one's ability to identify mental health issues. Seek help for mental health issue is not easy, as it requires funding and proper support. Okay? In recent years, there has been an increased focus on mental health, as we hear it, which affect people from all backgrounds. However, the different ethnic groups experience these issues in different ways. Due to disengagement with mainstream services to the Black community, people of color have fewer opportunities to discuss issues ranging from stress to depression to bipolar disorder. Evidence from mental health associations shows that in Canada, and so many more. What I'm saying here is, are we truly wanted to make a difference? Is the TPS board, including TPS, really here to make a change? Or is the system actually doing what it's supposed to do, which is pretty much what it's doing right now, nothing? Thank you.
Chair, you're on mute.
Thank you very much for your deputation, Ms. Ali. Before I ask board members if they have any questions of you, I just wanted to ask Deputy Demtew if he had any comments on your deputation. Deputy?
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you for the deputation. We are committed to doing something different. We are bringing a public health lens and explicitly linking our role and our efforts to a public health perspective in a way that is consistent with what the direction is in regards to community safety and well-being planning. But I would suggest, most importantly, a significant paradigm shift for how policing views success and our contribution to and our role as it relates to gun and gang activity. And secondly, as far as consultations, that, as I said at the start, became very, very clear that there are many, many voices we need to listen to, that we need to participate with, and we need to hear. And we are absolutely committed to making that happen. And one of our key underlying pillars of this framework is continuous improvement. And you repeatedly heard the word community informed and co-designing our approach. This is a significant shift for us organizationally, and we're committed to that course. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Now I'll turn it over to board members. Any questions of the deputant? Board members? Seeing none, I want to really thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. We all appreciate it very much, and thank you for your perspective. Dubie, can you put on the next deputant? I believe it's Louis March.
Yes, Chair. Louis should receive a prompt note from the system.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, cool. So first of all, thanks to the police executive that has reached out to Zero Gun Violence Movement to solicit our thoughts and opinions on addressing the issue of gun violence in the city of Toronto. I do appreciate that. And I trust that it was a meaningful engagement, because some of the content that we have spoken about, I see clearly embedded in the gun and gang strategy framework. I was particularly impressed by the fact that the word community has been used over 100 times. Over 100 times I've been counting in the presentation and in the discussion today. That was not by chance. I trust that it is by design, because we do indeed need a new and bold relationship with policing if we are to get to zero gun violence in our city. So thanks for this opportunity. In terms of the deputation today, I think it's important to understand. We work across the city of Toronto. We see the agony. We see the pain. We see the grief. We see the trauma resulting from gun violence in these neighborhoods. Not only do we see it, we feel it. It's a cost that we all must bear. It's a cost that we all must bear. We cannot leave this to chance, and we cannot leave it to what we've done in the past to solve the problems today. So as I said, we need a new and bold relationship with community. And it's going to take you out of your usual relationship. As Robert Peel said many years ago, police is the public and public is the police. That was the theory of policing. Public was an important, critical part of that relationship. And in the past, the public has been left out. So I am happy, I'm excited to see the new initiative, where, as I said, community was mentioned over 100 times today, this morning, through the presentations and the other discussions. Where do we go with this? The challenge will be, how do we translate? How do we transform this new initiative into reality, into action? Who is going to be the leader? Who is going to be the champion to make sure that this does not go to waste? Who is going to be the champion? Who's going to be the leader? I see the work being done by the TPS. I see work being done by the Toronto Community Safety and Wellness people. I see the focus on public health. I see the focus on mental health, right? But there's many other key factors that need to be addressed, because the police cannot do this by themselves. We have to move from chasing bullets, right, to preventing the gun from being fired. So yes, a lot of guns have been taken off the street in the recent raids. How are the guns getting into these neighborhoods? What is the federal government's role in it? What is the provincial government's role in it? Who's going to ensure that there's a central coordinated plan? That includes the police. That also includes Toronto District School Board, the school to prison pipeline. We've spoken about that for the last 30 years, and we're still speaking about it today. We've got work to do. We have a unique opportunity now to do it. And we have to move this from a report, a framework. We have to fill in the gaps now, the pieces. Who is going to be the leader? Who is going to be the champion to make sure that we bring all those pieces together and connect them? Because the police alone cannot do this. I do have an appreciation of time and effort. I've met some of the executive. I've spoken to them. And there is clearly a passion and a desire to do the right thing. Now we have to translate this into action. We have to translate it into action, and we have to show that bold and new leadership that is required. Because this is one piece in a huge puzzle.
Mr. March, I've got
so thanks for the opportunity. No, I'm wrapping up now.
Mr. March,
thanks for the opportunity, and I am going to wrap up now. And let's just keep moving this forward, because we might not get this opportunity again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. March. I didn't want to stop you, but you're at 5:45. You may well have some questions. Thank you very much for your comments and for your sense of hope. I appreciate hearing that. Board members, questions of Mr. March? Councilor Nunziata first, and then Mr. Morgan.
Question to Louis. Mark, as you know, you attended the the press conference that we had at Falstaff recently after the shooting. And you were there, and we had our provincial member, our federal member, myself that spoke. Do you recall that?
Of course I do.
Yeah. And as I spoke to you, and I agree 100% with you on that it's important that we get the provincial, federal, and city working together in partnership with the community. And some of the comments that were made from our provincial member and our federal member was exactly that. So moving forward on working together in partnership. So you agree with all the comments that were made that day from our provincial and federal member?
To be honest, I've been at this for 30 to 40 years, and I've heard this before over and over and over again. My challenge now, my concern right now is how do we turn it into real action?
Right.
I don't have another 30, 40 years to do this. So it has been said, let's just do it. And that's why I speak about the bold and new leadership that is required. Who's going to be the champion to take this to the finish line?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. We need to do it. And thank you very much for your deputation.
Thank you.
Mr. Morgan?
Thank you, Chair Hart. And I first just want to acknowledge the deputants, Mr. Marsh and I think Ms. Ali. Obviously, there's a lot of passion in which they speak. There's history, there's pain, there's hurt. But obviously a lot of courage to bring these things forward. I also, appreciate the acknowledgement that there's multiple communities when we speak of, quote unquote, the Black community and multiple ways of addressing and challenging these issues. Part of our responsibility as the, Toronto Police Services Board is looking what our role is in that. And I know that we are in the process of putting together some of the 81 recommendations that stemmed from the Andrew Local inquest, and that speaks to a lot of community holding us accountable. So I think these are difficult and challenging conversations. That's a table that I sit at as a co-chair with Anthony Morgan, and as one of multiple solutions that are needed to be able to address this. So I think the opportunity to be able to work together is important, but also being held accountable. And I hear over 30, 40 years of work. For some of us, that's unimaginable, and hearing the same things over and over. So I think what we're trying to do here from the perspective of the board, understanding the service is separate in many ways, as quote Deputy Chair Molnar had mentioned, that there needs to be a level of separation that allows for us to be held accountable, and we're doing is what we can within our role, and I think that's important to acknowledge. And I wanted to be able to give my commitment, and I know those that are part of this the board, their commitment in making sure a lot of these things are moved forward. I know there's a long way to go, but I think we have made some strides, particularly in the last number of years, particularly through last summer. But it's not enough, and we all can agree on that. And I do appreciate the accountability piece that is being brought forward. It's not easy coming every month, whether it's in public or private, to have conversations and still feeling that we're not moving quick enough. So I appreciate that, and it's just really more a comment than a question, but I wanted to just to acknowledge both deputants and their ability to share with us today. So thank you both.
I thank you for that comment, and I do appreciate it about the investment in moving forward and the willingness. One thing I'm going to say, and I want people to understand this, the solution to this problem is not as difficult and complicated as people make it out to be. The difficulty and the complication comes from the fact that we're not working together. That's where the difficulty comes from. We have the resources, we have the means, we have the intelligence, we have the people. We have it. This is Toronto. We have it. The complication comes from the fact that we're not coordinated. We're not centralized in this response. So this is where I speak about a robust, a bold, a new type of leadership, a new champion to take this across the finish line. And it means bringing all these pieces together. And I respect the work being done by the police. There's a new environment. There's a new feeling in the air because the relationship, I'm sensing from people's comments that even the police have toned down their aggressiveness in their engagement with our communities. So something's happening. So that's why we need to seize this moment. This opportunity might not come back again. And it's not as complicated as people have made it out to be. As I said, the difficulty is because we have not worked together properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kostakis.
Thank you to the debutantes, and also I'm going to echo being a social worker of 30 years experience and sharing not just in, as we talk about our passion, but the frustration. I concur with Mr. March that all the resources are in place. Our future champions are in place throughout. I know, taking off my board hat and coming from a social work, and the youth that are out there, community members that are vocal, that are champions, that have the capacity to move us forward. And like Mr. March, I fully am going to do whatever I can to support the efforts in moving forward for both a hat of the board, but also a hat as a service provider and in serving our communities and being part of a community that came from, I grew up in Scarborough with the violence, etc., and worked my first job as a social worker in Regent Park in dealing with gangs and guns and a lot of our Black male youth that were in the gangs and guns. And it isn't just about our Black communities, it's about all of our communities working together and moving this forward. And right now is the incremental full circle time, politically, federally, provincially, locally. We need to champion and talk to the feds and the province in how they can support in the capacity. The plan is there, the players are here, the capacity and the resources are there. Let's just do it. It's time to move forward. So thank you to all of you. I also like to thank Scott McKean, who I can't say enough good things about in his leadership and expertise and commitment, to Detective Constable Kondo and Chisner and Inspector Lawson and Deputy Demke. I always think I'm going to butcher your name. Sorry about that. I'll just call you Myron, I think. And to the chief and the leadership and everyone who's working together. I think, like Mr. March said, everyone is in place, from the governments to the partners to the funders to everyone. Like you as a social worker, so passionate about this moving forward, but it's time to use that passion to action. So thank you so much for the deputations as well and everyone's commitment and leadership. And let's do it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kostakis. Any other questions of Mr. March? Seeing none, Mr. March, before you go, I just want to thank you because I know you put in a lot of work with the Toronto Police Service and gave them lots of ideas that I think you saw reflected in the presentation today. And I also want to thank you for the very lengthy conversation that you and I had a couple of weeks ago. And I know based on that conversation and your comments today, you recognize that there's a new approach and there's a sense of hope and that we have to grab this opportunity. So we've all listened very attentively, but I really want to thank you for your input and all that you have done to move the ball forward, Mr. March.
Thank you.
Juby, can you put on the next deputy, please?
Yes, unfortunately, Aretha has not called back yet. So our next deputant is Paul Bailey. Paul, you should receive a prompt from the system now. Hello and good morning. Morning, we can hear you. Go ahead when you're ready.
That is great. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Paul Bailey, and I'm the Executive Director of the Black Health Alliance. We work to improve the health and well-being of Black communities, not only in Toronto, but across southern Ontario. Come today to speak briefly about the impact of gun violence on communities and the impact of poorly thought-out strategies and investments. I should say at the top that the strategy that Deputy NQ and team have presented pulled together parts of the service, all parts of the service to address these issues, and I know that has likely been a Herculean task. I too hear the commentary around community voices and public health. What I would like to see, though, is that embedded into a proper strategy. My concern is that this isn't an integrated strategy. If it was, you'd be presenting with Toronto Community Housing, the city, and community-based agencies collectively, the organizations that have the most direct responsibility to address these issues. Before the board votes to receive this PowerPoint presentation, I want to encourage members to Google and pull up Vision Zero Toronto, the city strategy to deal with road safety. I want you to see what it actually looks like when decision makers decide to take concrete action and coordinated steps to protect people's lives. When you do look at it, you'll see that it's multi-agency, you'll see that it's data-driven, and you'll notice the concrete actions that align all of the partners. What the board has before it today is not an integrated strategy. You know, we heard a lot earlier around the uptick in gun violence. Over the last 10 years or so, we've seen about 176% increase. And we know that the folks who are most affected by that is the communities and the young people that are living in communities of where they lack opportunities, especially young Black men. I should also say that Toronto Public Health, school boards, the city, they've all declared gun violence a public health issue, and so it's good to hear that Toronto Police is coming along. I should also say that a public health approach doesn't just recognize the impact on health or mental health. Public health approach is an actual approach that says that we can understand the causes of violence, that these injuries and deaths are preventable, that if we understand its risk and protective factors and take concrete steps and evidence-based actions, we can actually address these issues. It also helps to identify the correct role for police, not-for-profit, and city services. Yet, when I look at this strategy, I see the lack of real investment, the lack of coherence, similar to what we see for Vision Zero Toronto. So I have a few questions that I want to put out. Vision Zero has a 5-year plan. Where's the 5-year plan to eliminate gun violence? Vision Zero enjoys support from the mayor and involves partnerships from Toronto Police Service, Toronto Public Health, and the City of Toronto. Where is this level of multi-agency support for the elimination of gun violence? Vision Zero not only has safety plans, pilots, educational campaigns, outreach, leverages the power of data, and has a dashboard where citizens can track progress. Where is the commitment to this level of engagement and accountability for gun violence? Vision Zero also has dedicated teams from each partner agencies all working together to advance the actions assigned to each agency. So where are the dedicated teams in each agency working to eliminate gun violence in a coordinated fashion? I have to ask, when it comes to Black people's lives, why is it okay to approach this issue with such levity and lack of coherence? For the board members, two of which I know have seen children that they've taught and mentored, walk through their halls and lose their lives at the hands of guns and gun violence, I would say step up in the spirit of continuous improvement. Push this strategy one more step. Direct the service to go back and do the following. Really embrace a public health approach for the entire strategy. This can't be a strategy that just lists a random smattering of the initiatives that we're already doing. It has to have a theory of change. It has to have some coherence, and TPS can't drive this alone. The metrics aren't just for TPS. They have to be for all of the partners. 2, embrace true coordination and collaboration with the community. This is not just about community voice. It's about partnership. The service is going to have to figure out how it gets community to the table and still ensures public safety and the security of data. Coordination doesn't happen with an executive team. It happens with those on the front line. The mandate for coordination, however, comes from the executives. It comes from the mayor. So Mayor Tory, this is really on you here. The ask from the JCA was not about bringing together executives to coordinate. It was bringing executives together to strike the mandate to get this done and get it done now. There is no magic bullet in the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan or SAFETO. That is necessarily broad and it's necessarily structured to bring everybody together. But right now, TPS, Toronto Community Housing, and the city actually has no strategy at the moment. All of those organizations are working on strategies at this very moment. Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan will not start to build a trust. It will not start to align with the data sharing. It will not start to align with
Bailey,
activities.
Mr. Bailey, sorry, it's Jim Hart. You're at 5:40. I've let you go 40 seconds over. I unfortunately have to wrap you up, but there may well be questions of you. Before I go to board members for questions, though, you did talk about strategy versus framework. So I'd like the deputy to kind of comment on some of the questions you had around a deeper strategy and what the future holds for the TPS. Deputy, can you comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the deputant raising some very important things that were certainly part of our considerations. And this is very deliberately called a framework for a strategy because what we are doing is planting seeds of integration and coordination that we expect will be nurtured and will grow. Our framework has absolutely committed ourselves, and I will tell you, we have a commitment from public health, community housing, and social development to engage at the most senior levels, to come together and work together in a coordinated way to develop a strategic response that brings us all together in a type of approach that we have not seen before. But it is a framework, and we're going to work together and come back to the board. We're very much committed to continue to come back with updates on our progress and continue to build out our approach and evolve a much more enhanced response to gun and gang activity with all the key agencies.
Thank you, Deputy. Now I'll go back to board members. Are there any questions of the deputant? Board members? Seeing none. Mr. Bailey, I just want to thank you for taking the time today. Your comments were very insightful and helpful, and we all took them under advisement. Thank you very much. Do we have any other deputants? I know Aretha wasn't on the line. Has she made it in or not?
No, unfortunately not, sir.
Okay, well, now take this into committee. Any questions on the presentation itself? Councilor Nunziata first.
Thank you. Question to staff on the presentation that you made on page 3. Why residents believe gangs exist. Poverty is 58%. Lack of activity is 32%. Now, that 32%, when you talk about lack of activities, is it targeted with not enough recreation programs, in Toronto housing buildings, or if you can just elaborate a bit on that comment.
The insights we gained from our Engage 416 town halls is what produced that information. And the lack of activities, I believe, are a host of things, whether in the community or in the immediate support network. But the lack of activities generally is a very significant concern that residents identified for us.
Okay, so it wasn't specifically around in and around Toronto housing units in those buildings. It was just general comments, correct?
Councillor, I'd be remiss to say it definitively is not related to community housing, but it was unique to the insights provided by residents who were engaged during that process. So I would be remiss to frame it that it did not include community housing. It very well may have.
Okay, so the Project Engage, which I've been involved in my ward, there and Toronto Housing is now going through a report at Toronto Housing Board on community safety. So there's an agreement then with police services with Toronto Community Housing, and as far as a partnership, working with Toronto Housing in certain neighborhoods on engaging tenants.
Yes, there is. There's a great amount of collaboration happens between neighborhood officers and local resources from community housing. So at the local community level, there is definitely engagement between the police and community housing. And we, of course, are advancing an additional model of executive coordination and collaboration.
Okay, I know that I know that Toronto Housing now is looking bringing forward a community safety plan as well as and working with TPS. I know from the pilot that's being done in my ward in 12 Division, a lot of the officers are knocking on doors in Toronto community housing units, asking if they need any assistance. So which I think it's amazing, and the positive comments I'm receiving from tenants is very positive. So thank you for that. My next question is on slide 13 about engage the Ministry of the Attorney General and opportunities to engage provincial and federal governments in partnership with the Toronto Police. Can you just elaborate a bit on that? And do you believe at this point that there'll be a direction by the board, or that's happening now, and at a later date the board could take a position?
Well, we certainly value the continued commitment of the board in engaging with the service and working collaboratively to lobby government.
I'll be back before it. No sound.
Sorry, I think we had an interruption here.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just remind everyone to mute their mics if you're not speaking.
Okay.
We certainly value board engagement, particularly as it relates to moving forward some evidence-based ideas around bail and how we handle bail to the provincial and federal levels of government. So there's a role for the board, I believe, to assist in that. And as far as the Ministry of Attorney General and our engagement with the ministry, is we need to find, again, evidence-based proposals that would assist Crown attorneys in their role on when bail conditions are being crafted. That perhaps consideration can be given to conditions requiring some form of supports to be accessed that are unique and customized to the individual circumstance. And we need to have some discussions with our partners at the ministry about the potential for such a framework and what evidence-based recommendations we can make in that regard.
So there would be then a further report coming forward to the board where it would be appropriate for the board to take a position at the board level rather than today. Is that your recommendation?
Yes, I'd expect that would be exactly what happens, Councillor. In fact, one of the areas of work we really need to focus on is our analytics in this space to understand what recommendations make sense based on the evidence before us.
Okay, thank you to that. Just one other question. As you heard from Lewis and a couple of the deputants on how we need to coordinate our efforts and partnership with federal, provincial, school, the city, the community. Obviously, the community is a priority on various community agencies on coming together. So what are your comments comments about the comments that were made from the deputants on how we can move forward on that. I think, which I believe that we need to do it, as Louis mentioned, and how we can move forward.
The call for coordination has been loud and clear for quite some time. And recently, we have seen what happens when leadership commits from our various agencies to make real progress in a coordinated approach. And we need to build on that. We need to seize the moment, as the deputant indicated, and reframe our approach to be much more coordinated at all levels. At the local community level, there's some amazing coordination that happens, as you're very familiar with in your community that you represent, Councillor. But we need to take this up to the strategic and leadership levels as well. And as one of the deputants mentioned, bring together all the different areas of responsibility in a new way, in a new coordinated fashion. And I believe what we are advancing today is certainly going to move us forward in a meaningful way that is sustainable, and we will be accountable to both you as board members, but also our communities that we serve.
Okay, thank you. So at a future meeting, there will be a report coming forward how we can move ahead, correct?
Yes, I'd be prepared to commit, and that we will be providing updates on our progress on various elements of this framework and the continued evolution of it.
Yes, and I think that the board itself, a couple board members could be involved in that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Board members, Ms. Kostakis, and then Mr. Morgan.
So just to piggyback on that conversation, I believe with these initiatives and all the great work that has been done so far from TPS's perspective, and as Mr. March mentioned many times too, there's a lot of the communities and outside of Toronto Community Housing, but everyone is working together locally too, but also with the same efforts in engaging with our governments on this topic and this issue, citywide, province-wise, and country-wise. So I believe what we should be doing offline as well in moving this forward with actions is really sharing that information and knowledge of, because groups are still working in silos on the same initiative and want the same outcomes. So I think in moving forward, an action plan immediately would be into having those conversations and consolidating those coordinated efforts as one group for our effort in moving forward. And we have the evidence, some of that analytical work that we're talking about as well has been already gathered in different neighborhoods with different leaders, and also the agencies that are out there as well as the community at large, as it affects everybody, no matter where you're living and what your cultural background is. This is a huge issue. So I would like to recommend, just in moving forward, that we have these offline conversations sooner than later, and consolidate all those efforts and those relationships and partners in speaking to MAG, to the federal and provincial governments, that we're already doing. A lot of agencies already doing that as coalitions, as larger groups. But I think if we communicate all that together and have those discussions, we could all be moving together, even as a larger group, and maybe getting that action moving forward a lot quicker and expediting all the efforts and the actions. That's pretty much, I'll just say that, and offer to be part of that initiative and moving it forward in that effort. Thank you.
Mr. Morgan, a question?
Yeah, I just real quickly, I think if there was, I guess it's two things. One, just some timelines. Is this 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? Is there sort of some timelines for some of these pieces to be implemented? And then so that's one. Two, given that we're now moving into the warmer months and challenges that faces in terms of, as we know, historically increased gang gun violence, is there a plan to be able to sort of support those challenges, given our current COVID challenges, and if any lessons learned from last summer, and if there's anything that the plan going forward, given some of the understandings that we faced with COVID and from last summer. So I guess those two questions.
Deputy, can you speak to that, timelines and any summer strategy?
If I may, Chair, I'll ask Inspector Eklund to talk about some planning around the summer safety work, and then I can loop back on timelines.
Thank you for that, Mr. Morgan. I can tell you from a divisional perspective, and having recently worked in the staff superintendent's office, our typical summer safety plans have sometimes just been efforts to put out more policing resources in order to deter gun and gang violence. The move is shifting more towards a more strategic approach to that, rather than just sort of blindly deploying policing resources to any area, which we've seen the impact of that in the past, is to really use our new crime traffic order management process and the dashboards being developed to be more surgical, more strategic, more intelligence-led in our approaches. I can tell you that in the next week, there is a meeting with all of the unit commanders of East and West Field Command, or Priority Response Command, and Communities and Neighborhoods Command. And I know that these summer safety type initiatives will be discussed in that, and unit commanders will be detailed with having a really, really close look within their own divisions and coming up with those strategies. Again, not for the sake of having a strategy, but for the sake of being very strategic, very surgically have a real surgical approach to that, and then submit those to the staff supers and they'll be approved. So that is certainly on the table.
And if I may, Chair, as far as timelines, many of the things we discussed today are certainly in progress or very close to being actualized. And some require us to stage it. But the vast majority of what we discussed, if not in progress, is going to be actioned over the coming months through this coming year. So by way of example, engagement with public health, I can tell you I've already connected with public health. We've already identified who's going to participate in the executive team. And we have had some initial communication that we need to move forward on the evaluation discussion. And we expect that we will have our preliminary meetings in the coming weeks. The executive team, I would expect, would be stood up in the next handful of weeks, pandemic response permitting. A number of things like the enhancements to our crime management, the use of a common operating dashboard or common operating picture to allow our unit commanders to see what's happening, not just in their division, but in neighboring divisions or divisions that they know they're intersecting with as it relates to the mobility of some of the gun and gang activity. That is up and running in its infancy now, as we speak, and being layered into our operational response divisionally, locally, as we speak. And then initiatives, as I said, things around gap analysis and looking for some best practices around a multi-sectoral response that is unique to gun and gang activity. These are things that we expect to commence later this year. So I can answer any specifics on any individual things I didn't cover in timelines, but I can commit to you that we're very much moving forward on all of them quickly.
Thank you, Deputy. Mr. Morgan, any further questions?
No, thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Thank you.
Board members have asked all their questions. Any board, and some have already spoken on the item. Anyone else wish to speak on the item? Mayor Tory.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, can I say thank you to the chief and to the deputy and to the inspectors and to Scott and the whole team. I mean, I just think this is an excellent presentation, and we've heard some of the feedback, which is unusual in this area, that is as positive as it is, including from members of the board who have deep involvement in all of this. You know, on the subject of the government partnership, I think what has happened, and I'm not paying credit to the city government of which I'm a part, sort of in an unfair way, but I think because we're local, We have, and partly because of things like even like the pandemic, we have sort of started to do a better job of forming these kinds of partnerships with the leadership of the police, I should say, locally, but we haven't yet, and I'll put it in this order, and I run the risk of getting in trouble when I say these kinds of things, but I think we've had a slightly better experience with the federal government and having them come to the table, and I think we'll find when Minister Blair, for example, allocates the money under that commitment that he's made, that this is going to be something that is closer to what we think should be done by way of how to sort of help finance and facilitate those partnerships. But as yet, we haven't yet brought together the broad array of provincial social supports and other kinds of things that form a part of this kind of wraparound approach. And it's all a work in progress, but I just think we're doing a little better with the federal government. And I think if there's a partnership focus to be had, it is not so much with the police, the community, and the city coming together, because I think that's happening quicker, but rather with the other governments being brought into that partnership. I should say that I heard reference to the downstream behavior that we're sort of dealing with now, and sometimes that seemed to be the purpose of policing before, was to deal with the downstream behavior, and I think now we're moving to a situation which I was so heartened by, which is to sort of deal with the things that lead to the downstream behavior, such that there'll be much less downstream behavior to deal with in the context of the flashing lights and the sudden arrival of police into neighborhoods when they've been called, in fairness to them, for very serious reasons. But if you have less of that, you're going to have less of that kind of what's seen as intrusive presence of the police. I heard both the acknowledgement of, and Mr. March said 100 times, and if his counting says 100, that's fine with me, many times, the community voice. And I will just say, in my recent experience with Lawrence Heights, where I sort of helped to pull together a group that included the police, but was not limited to that by any means, we saw in a space of 2 or 3 weeks that the people, including the police and others, all the sort of community players, got together and formulated a plan for that community that was, I think, quite thorough. It's not going to be perfect. It is going to be implemented. Where I was able to help was to convene the meeting and then to set a timetable for the subsequent meeting at which the plan had to be put forward. And with the help of the chief and a host of others, that was done. And I think that is going to win more confidence from the community because it is a community-based plan. All I did was ask the people from the community to come together. And I'm just so glad that the fundamental underpinning of this is the community voice, because I think that they have, in instances like Lawrence Heights and others, given us the guidance that we need as to exactly what the plan should consist of. I think the other thing that I heard was about people's needs. In the end, it is all about people. Just like I said earlier on in talking about Deputy Chief Coxon and the fact that the police service, what is the police service? Yeah, it's a book full of procedures and it's, all kinds of technology and whatnot. It's people that make up the police service, and it's people who make up the community, and it's even people that have problems in their lives, and some of them cause problems for the rest of us. But as was put, and I wrote it down, meeting the complex needs of those people is going to go a long way to changing the quantity of that downstream behavior, because there's going to be less of the downstream behavior police have to worry about. So that I'm just so gratified to hear this plan is underpinned by that. And then the final thing I want to just say is that there was reference to a summer safety plan, and Mr. Morgan just asked about that. I just hope this has a sort of very intensive kind of focus in that regard to make sure that the summer has some special attention, because it always requires it for one reason or another. Thank you very much. And just thanks for a job very well done to getting this plan put together.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think you've summed up this item perfectly. Board members, can I have a motion to receive the presentation? Vice Chair, seconded by Ms. Kostakis. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Deputy and team, thank you very much. What a great presentation. Well done. Thank you. I will now move us forward to item number 4, which is the presentation by Veronix regarding the public engagement for the Chief of Police selection process. Mr. Teschner, you and your staff have been doing a lot of work in this regard, so I'm going to kick it over to you to introduce the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to everybody shortly. This item is the first time that the board is receiving a public presentation with respect to the Chief of Police selection process. As we have said publicly before, there are 2 broad phases to this. The first is public engagement and consultation. And that is the phase that we are about to formally kick off, although a lot of work has been done in preparation for what I would consider to be the broadest public engagement and consultation process for the chief of police selection process that this board at least has ever undertaken. Folks will recall that the 81 recommendations that were adopted by the board in August included very specific recommendations that would anchor that consultation, as well as recommendations that came from City Council. We know members of the public are anxious to get going, but we want to make sure, obviously, that this work is done right. And some months ago, the board formally approved a contract with Environics to help facilitate this public engagement process. Jody Shanoff, the Vice President of Consultation and Engagement for Environics, is on the line. She will walk the board and the public through a presentation that outlines this public engagement process and obviously take any questions. But I will say that this process will be getting underway as early as next week, and I know Jody will share some details in that regard. I also just want to pay tribute to the members of the team here in the board office who have been supporting this work, and Danielle Dowdy in particular, who has been working very closely with Environics to make sure that the voices of community and those that we serve across the city inform this process. So without further ado, Jody, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Board, for having me here today. And there is a presentation deck. I'm hoping Doobie is able to share that on the screen, and we can walk through the update together. The purpose of this presentation is to provide you with an update on the organization and the execution of the public consultation activities that are ultimately going to shape the job description for Toronto's next chief of police. As Ryan shared, this is the first phase in the search for the chief. When our consultations are complete, we will be sharing the results with the board and the board office, and then those results are to be shared with the executive recruitment firm who has been selected to undertake the work of finding and vetting candidates for the next phase of the selection process. And as mentioned, public engagement begins in earnest next week. We're currently very busy in the recruitment phase, and I'll share some more details on that. So we'll just go to the next slide. Thank you. Just a quick recap. Our team was approved by the board to undertake the public consultation activities at the October board meeting at the end of last year, followed by the executive recruitment firm at the end of November. We spent November and December planning our activities, working with board office and staff, informing ourselves on the issues related to undertaking this project so that we were in a position as soon as the holiday break was concluded to begin what we refer to as our pre-consultation phase, which took us from early January into early February to collect information. That phase involved outreach and discussion with key stakeholders in various communities across the city in various positions. And we solicited early feedback on the topics that we would be investigating during our discussions, the proposed process for engaging with the public, and any other form of information or advice that those key stakeholders wanted to share with us at that stage that they felt would be important for us to know as we embarked on the public consultation activities. Ultimately, during this phase, we connected with 30 different stakeholders in virtual conversations, and their feedback really was very instrumental in helping us to finalize our approach to public and community consultation for this initiative. We'll head to the next slide, please. The top recommendations that were quite consistent regardless of the stakeholder or the community or the position they held. Some things came through very clearly, which we have then carried forward in our recommendations and design for the public consultation. Primarily, stakeholders acknowledged that we're all very limited right now as a result of the pandemic restrictions. Meeting in person is not a possibility at this time. We don't want to invite the risk of it and need to prioritize public safety. And so it was discussed at some length that all of our activities would be taking place virtually, and understanding that there may be some limitations associated with that, but the importance of working closely, in particular with community organizations who can help manage those limitations and connect us with the people who really want to be at the table and participate in this process. Related to that, some of the community organizations expressed that as a result of pandemic restrictions, and just as a reminder, at the time we were in the heat of wave 2, so it was definitely top of mind in our conversations. But there were some clear capacity issues for many of these, in particular community organizations, but other groups serving the city as well. And as a result, we were asked to consider spreading out the timeline to a certain extent to make sure that we can help those groups accommodate needs and prioritize dealing with public health needs at this time. And as a result, we took concerns and organized the calendar of activities in a way that delayed some of the conversations until a time when hopefully the weather is a little better and there's a lower case count, so that organizations have a little more capacity when it comes to, again, helping to bring those voices to the table. Through that, we acknowledged that in the search for diversity and transparency, which are key to this activity, to getting the trust of people participating with us, and in turn getting results that are reliable and meaningful, we need to keep a flexible calendar of activities. We want to make sure we're keeping these activities moving because, as Ryan pointed out, the public is very keen to see this unfold. So we don't want any undue delays, but we will allow for flexibility depending on the public health situation and the extent to which that hinders some groups' ability to participate. Go to the next slide, which will show us a high-level view of the calendar of activities we have about to unfold. So in total, we're looking at approximately 27 distinct sessions with different stakeholder groups, a few activities devoted specifically to the public, and then other activities for targeted stakeholder groups and distinct conversations. There is currently a link to register to participate in the public sessions, and I'll talk a little bit more about those in a moment, but that is available through the TPSB website, where we ask people to indicate their interest so that we can recruit them into one of the 4 public discussions that will take place. That website will also shortly host a link to an open survey for residents as well, who can provide their feedback to us in the event they prefer not to participate in a discussion or miss the opportunity to provide their feedback through that channel. Other sessions on this calendar, of course, are devoted to those other very distinct stakeholder communities that are important to bring to the table. And again, just emphasizing the need for us to be flexible given any developments in public health considerations during this time. We'll head to the next slide, please. Just a few details related to the public engagement activities or those activities that are devoted specifically to participation by just general population residents of Toronto who would like to be part of this. So we will be hosting 4 virtual, so online sessions based on the stakeholder feedback that we got during the pre-consultation phase. It was very clear that there are distinct issues related to the different areas of the city, many commonalities, but also things that are particular to geography in Toronto. And so we are designing these sessions to focus on those 4 distinct regions and recruit people from those regions to each of the discussions. We're aiming for 100 participants at each of those sessions, and we will engage with them virtually. The other public-facing activity, of course, is the online survey. It will be hosted on the TPSB website, and that survey will be an instrument that the Environics team will design based on the discussion plan that we use for the public consultation sessions, but operationalized in a way that makes sense as a survey and that is intuitive for residents to use and complete, and also limiting the amount of demographic information and things so people feel comfortable sharing their information with us. We just want to know some basics so we can speak to important demographic groups across the city and know that we've heard from a diversity of voices through those different channels. Our next slide is just a very high level view of the agenda, the progression of the discussions that we're aiming for in the public sessions, but also similarly in the stakeholder sessions, engaging with participants, covering high level issues that are pertinent to participants who come to the table and want to share their perspectives on the issues facing the police force today. Having a mix where the sessions are larger, a mix of plenary discussions and feedback, but also some smaller breakout conversations. We find those helpful, especially for people who may not be inclined to speak in front of larger groups. We'll have smaller, individually facilitated, we'll have multiple environics facilitators in these sessions. In smaller groups where we'll ask people to focus on the traits, the qualities, the characteristics that Torontonians are looking for in their next chief of police. Those will be enumerated and prioritized prior to the end of the session through a polling exercise, so we're able to quantify some of the feedback. And again, that progression of discussion is also reflected in the survey that will be available through the TPSB website. So finally, on the last slide of the update, just in terms of covering off next steps, where we are currently and what members of the board and members of the public can expect in the coming weeks. We are going to continue to invite and recruit participants, getting out through the various channels. The service, the board office, the city have been very, very helpful in getting the word out that these activities are taking place. And so we are able to get people into the various discussions that will be relevant to them. So that will continue for the next few weeks. You've seen the consultation calendar, and we will do our very best to stick to that, again, taking into consideration the need for flexibility and any kind of other public health considerations that arise over that time. We will be sure to, we are in regular and constant contact with the board office, but also providing updates to the board as that calendar of activities unfolds. And then finally, once we have completed the consultations and we have synthesized the information that we've heard, we're then in a position to share that with the board so that the board can review and ultimately share with the executive recruitment firm, Boyd & Canada, who has been kept apprised of the progression of activities, but appreciating that their role doesn't begin until our role is completed in this process. So we're keeping them up to date so they know what's unfolding. And that's the extent of my update at this stage, but I welcome any questions, Mr. Chair, that through you from the board.
Thank you for your presentation. Board members, questions? Mayor Tory.
Hi, Jody. Thanks for your presentation very much. I have two, and through the chair. First of all, just I guess it's a bit of a plea on my part. And look, it's the board is your client. I'm only one member, but you know, I'm the one that answers quite a bit for the fact we're doing this consultation, and I'm very, very comfortable doing so because I point out that it was something that was, you know, asked for, and in fact, I would have said demanded by the community. And but people are, some of the commentators are out there kind of saying it's a waste of time, and why would you bother? What do you have a search firm for? And I sort of tell them exactly as you just said, that you have to inform the search firm as to the kind of person that you want, and that we think it is very fair and very reasonable to have the public involved in that. The plea is simply that we try, and I would say even if the health things change, I'm not sure they will at this stage, change to the negative to go back to a more restrictive mode, that we sort of just have a plan B ready such that there is no doubt that this report would be in hand. It says late spring, and I would have said, yeah, if we could just put a date on that, because late spring can mean a lot of things, but maybe, you know, June 15th or even earlier, just because I just feel it is time. I think, you know, I can defend the thing which I'm called upon to do, perhaps more so than anybody, even maybe including the chair, just because they have at me more often. So that's a comment more than and a request that maybe you can have a look at the timetable. And again, I'm a bit out of place in saying that because it's really the chair that should speak on behalf of the board. The second part is just a question about with these surveys. I mean, it is, and I think I raised this once before when you were with us. You know, they're another way that don't require people to be at the 45-minute or the hour-long seminars and whatnot, because not everybody can be. But they're also subject to, you know, to being, trying to think of the right word, overwhelmed by people with a particular, you know, point of view, or people who, and I see this it's like my surveying email that comes into my office. I mean, when you look at, in fact, sometimes you get 400 and 500 emails easily, sometimes 1,000 on a subject. If you have to sort of examine the fact that some of them are very organized, and I just want to see what safeguards we have in place to ensure that what we're seeing on that survey, because it'll get outsized attention. But I say outsized, I mean it's an officially sanctioned survey by the board. It's being done by a very respected company, and as a result, people will pay attention to it, which is fine. I just want to make sure that, given all of that, that it is something that we can say, well, look, we didn't let this get sort of hijacked by any group in the city or any neighborhood or any people, and I just wondered what comments you had on that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Chair, through you, in response to those questions and comments, thank you for reiterating the importance of keeping this rolling. The Environics team is definitely very keen to do that, and we're confident that keeping things virtual, again, while it presents some limitations for some people who may want to participate, that it preserves the safety and reduces the risk, and shouldn't have to throw us off our timeline. So we will stick with that approach, and again work with the community organizations to find ways to get people to come to the table who might be limited through their own access to technology or tools of that nature. With respect to the online survey, yes, we understand that when you open the doors that anybody is welcome to come through those doors. I did mention earlier in my presentation that we're asking for some demographic information, which helps us as the analysts of the data to understand the diversity of people who are participating, so that we are able to understand, you know, whether it's geographically, whether it's from an age range, or any other limited demographics, to assure ourselves that we have in fact heard from a diversity of voices within the city. We have lots of tools at our disposal, including census data to understand the actual, you know, profile what the city looks like, so that we're in a position to look at the final data that comes in through the survey and compare it to what we understand of the Toronto population, and be in a position to be able to comment on either, yes, this is a representative view of residents, or it may be leaning towards overrepresentation in certain areas. And then that's what we like to refer to as embracing our biases and understanding that about the data and presenting it in that context when we talk about it with the board.
Thank you.
Further questions, board members? Oh, seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation. We appreciate it, and we'll be looking for your final outcome sometime mid-June, sounds like.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Board members, can I have a motion to receive the presentation? Motion to receive. Ms. Kostakis, seconder. Seconder. Vice Chair, all in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. We'll now move forward to item 9 on the agenda, which was held down by Mayor Tory, which is the annual report on CEW use.
Yes, let me just, I've got to find it in my binder. It's notes. Just 1 second, Mr. Chair.
I have a question. If you'd like me to go first, Mayor Tory.
Yeah, just flipping through, finding where my notes are, if you can, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. I'll ask a question of the chief. On page 5 of the report, I see a number of statistics actually throughout the report, and as I analyze them, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's tells me that there were 48,460 violent calls for service captured altogether, and 178 of those calls, the CEWs were actually deployed, either full deployment, drive stun, or full deployment and drive stun, rather than demonstrated force. So if that's correct, what that's telling me is that 3.6 times out of every 1,000 violent interactions, CEWs are actually used, which seems very low on the face of it. Is that correct, Chief?
Yes, Chair, those numbers are correct, and the numbers are very, very low, and I think they're actually quite different what the perception is of a lot of people in terms of their use.
Okay, just want to verify that. That's what I thought, Chief. Thank you. Tori, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions, one of which I can't find the reference, but there was one, and I just think it's important we look at these things in light of everything. There was some reference made to the fact that we were beginning to collect, or had begun to collect, or something, information based on race of the people who were the subject of the use of the conducted energy devices. And I seem to recall it was sort of, and I just can't find it right now in my notes. And I wondered if you could speak to that, only because, again, I think it is important for us to take note if the it's not so much about the use on various racialized communities based on their percentage of the population, but rather as a percentage of the encounters they're having with police. The encounters they have with police is a different issue, which we are very seized of. But I just wanted to know if there's anything we can conclude from that. And then the only other question I had was just some comments, maybe just about it's interesting to see the high percentage of people who subsequently, I guess, were apprehended under the Mental Health Act. And just whether there's any comments about that, because there's quite a theme through here with respect to people being obviously very troubled in the type of call that these end up being used on disproportionately, and whether there's any sort of comment, advice as to how we could sort of have less of that, knowing that sometimes that seems to be, I guess, the only option, and more of will this be helped, for example, by the presence of more mobile crisis intervention teams? Is it the case? Have we analyzed, for example, whether a conducted energy device is used less frequently when there's a mobile crisis intervention team that's on the job? Have we actually looked at that? Because to me, that would be a hugely important thing to look at. I think the answer will be yes, but I have no idea. So those are my two areas that I just wanted to ask about, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Tory. Chief?
Okay, my first comment is that the province has specified that use of force will be part of the race-based data collection strategy, and we've actually included the use of the taser in that calculation as well. In terms of the other analysis, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask Deputy Coxon if she or a member of her staff could speak to this, please. To the question.
I can speak to it, Chief. Thank you. So yes, the race-based data collection, and Mr. Mayor, I think that's why you can't find it. It actually falls a little bit under a different model, which is the race-based data collection piece. So use of force is going to be looked at, not just CEWs, and that's getting to the heart of what you're talking about with respect to understanding, when force is used, and what does that look like in terms of the race, ethnicity, gender, etc., of those where force is used and the kind of force that's used. We are still at a point, analytically speaking, where when we get into the things such as, is there a mobile crisis team on scene? What kind of de-escalation tactics worked more than others, etc. We're having to actually do individual reviews of the narrative of that use of force report. So we're a little bit challenged in terms of our ability to analyze some of those key questions. And I want you to know those are key questions. I can tell you that as we work toward a more robust statistical analysis, as this project continues, and you'll see more of this project reported to the board in September. But while we're doing that, we have just, we're going out to community for a CAP program with respect to the college. And we are looking at training and the integration of looking at anti-Black and anti-Indigenous racism, looking at de-escalation tactics and the issue of, mental health calls and when CEWs are used. So all of these questions are certainly being built into our training to provide a more robust model while we continue to work on getting the kind of statistical analysis you're looking for. I agree, we need it.
Thank you, Deputy. Just one more, if I may, Mr. Chair, on the same, sort of along the same lines. would we think of making any use of, and I'm not sure if we're allowed to under all the rules we set, and quite properly so, but would we think of making any use of the video that is available from body-worn cameras to take a selection of those in a certain circumstance, like Mental Health Act apprehensions or, you know, whatever, and have a look at them and learn from that as to all the questions you just asked about de-escalation and what was actually done. Are we planning to do some of that, like to make use of this other than just for accountability purposes, to actually look and sort of learn about mental health and persons in crisis from the tapes and when a CEW is used? Because I'm sure that you could cross-reference and find the tape, you know, where the people had a camera.
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. That was always part of the program for body-worn camera, looking at it as a learning opportunity, opportunities for training and discussion, particularly on calls where we have more to learn, for sure.
Thank you, Deputy.
And if I could just add one other thing, Mr. Mayor, the under the new MCIT program that we have that's being led by Deputy Ewing, we're going to have an MCIT dashboard that we're building that will speak to the use of force options that are exercised at each of their calls.
Thank you, Chief.
Board members, any other questions? Anyone wish to speak to this item? Can I have a mover, please? Can someone move receipt of item number 9? Tory, seconded by the Vice Chair. All in favor? Any opposed? Item number 9 carries. We now move forward to item number 13, which is the annual report 2021 filing of Toronto Police Service procedures. And I believe we have 2 deputants on this item. Doobie, when you're ready.
We'll begin with Derek. I think actually Derek is the only deputant on this item. The other deputation, oh, sorry, no. Derek and then Chris. Derek, you should receive a prompt now.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, I'm just going to start my timer. I invoke my guaranteed fundamental freedom of expression, and I do not consent to being interrupted while I'm speaking by any public servant of mine, barring any objections, of course. And these lockdowns are not based on science. These lockdowns are based on China's Communist Party propaganda. And by the way, has this board ever once held the Toronto Police to account for improperly charging people with acts and statutes, you know, as Ontario is a common law jurisdiction? No. That's because you're not the Police Oversight Board. You are the Controlled Opposition Board. So in this item, so there was one glaring omission amongst all the procedures listed in this item, and that was the rule book people have to follow that Staff Sergeant Bernardo mentioned on camera in front of the Rebel News at Yonge Dundas Square recently. So one procedure in this report it mentions is for 11-04 protests and demonstrations. So one thing I've noticed the police have been using to pick off these COVID protesters has been common nuisance mentioned in the criminal code. It says, every person, which we all know is defined as Her Majesty and an organization, is guilty of an indictable offense and liable to imprisonment for a term of not more than 2 years, or is guilty of an offense punishable on summary conviction who commits a common nuisance and by doing so, A, endangers the lives, safety, or health of the public, or B, causes physical injury to any person. For the purposes of this section, everyone commits a common nuisance who does an unlawful act or fails to discharge a legal duty and thereby endangers the lives, safety, health, property, or comfort of the public, or obstructs the public in the exercise or enjoyment of any right that is common to all the subjects of Her Majesty in Canada. So when you really think about it, who are the ones obstructing the public in the exercise or enjoyment in their right to protest? It's the police. So it's really the Toronto Police who have been the ones who have been committing this common nuisance. Another procedure mentioned is 04-18 Appendix G, Duties of a Police Officer, subsection 42.1, Police Services Act. But let's take a look at what section 42.3 of the Police Services Act says. Powers and duties of common law constable. A police officer has the powers and duties ascribed to a constable at common law. Now, I don't know if you've ever read the Evidence Act, Chair Hart, but if you do, in section 34.1, subsection 2, it mentions common law or statutory rule. And then in subsection 3 mentions the same thing again, common law or statutory rule. Again, but when you really think about it, in his response to Chris Langenfeld last month, while Chief Raymer kept saying we're enforcing the law because people wanted us to enforce the law, so we were enforcing the law, Chief Raymer wasn't exactly clear on what law, or more specifically, what jurisdiction of law the Toronto Police were enforcing, which was statutory rules. And as I explained last month, Peter Hogg's clarification of section 32.1, statutory rules only apply to government actors, government actions, and those performing a public function of government. I just wanted to point out, in association with the common law, the Courts of Justice Act in section 96 points out that courts shall administer concurrently all rules of equity in the common law. Where a rule of equity conflicts with a rule of the common law, the rule of equity prevails. But again, nobody actually knows what the rules of equity are, right? It doesn't say that anywhere. Seeing how the police have been using the flu to violate rights and freedoms, and just in case Premier Ford dreams up signing another one of his magic stay-at-home orders again, I wish to make another actual deputation. So I appoint the Toronto Police and the Ontario Attorney General's office to act as the trustees for me in this matter, and that I direct them with the instructions that if I am ever falsely arrested in the future, that I claim the jurisdiction of the Court of Equity to have any such matter resolved in. So I just want to point out some rules that aren't covered in these procedures, and that is regarding the rules of usufruct and the duties that go along with the rules of the usufructuary. And this is from the Hague October 18th, 1907, Article 55. The occupying state shall be regarded only as administrator and usufructuary of public buildings, real estate, forests, and agricultural estates belonging to the hostile state and situated in the occupied country. It must safeguard the capital of these properties and administer them in accordance with the rules of usufruct. That's my time.
Thank you, Derek. Any questions of Derek? Seeing none. As usual, Derek, thank you very much for your deputation.
Thank you, Chair Hart.
Debbie, can you put on Mr. Langenfeld, please?
Yes, Chris, you should receive a prompt now.
Thank you, Doobie. Yes, on this issue of disclosure of TPS procedures, I am also going to refer here to procedure 11-04 on protests and demonstrations that Derek just referred to, and he and I disagree on many points on this, but I do fully support his argument here that the use of the common nuisance charge seems inappropriate. As I stated before, really we've set up that the appropriate response here is for a fine for people that are violating these acts. But beyond that, I'd like to ask the chief to publicly release this procedure, procedure 1104 on protests and demonstrations, redacted as necessary in order to assist the public in guiding themselves to conform with reasonable restrictions on their actions, and also to be able to hold officers accountable, and so that the public can recognize and appreciate when officers are acting in accordance with their instructed duty. But I'd also like to refer to, in regards to recent protests here, a couple of sources have advised me that the public protests in recent weeks have seen a police response that has been more closely conforming to public's desire for an appropriate balance between freedoms of rights and public order. And I'd like to thank the chief and the board for the apparent efforts to readjust that balance. I hope that will continue, and that includes not having officers charging people with public nuisance or common nuisance except in the, obviously, where there's violence involved and things like that, we can all appreciate that that's a different story. But if people are simply exercising their right to protest, then I think that is, as I pointed out previously, a fundamental right and has to be supported. Beyond that, I also wanted to address Ms. Molynar's departure from the board, and I'd just like to add my voice to the many thanks from the board and the service, to also include the thanks of the public for her service to the board, for your faithfulness, your fairness, your thoughtful consideration, impartial treatment, and very importantly, your willingness to listen. Thank you. And to Deputy Chief Shauna Coxon, I'd just like to wish her a bon voyage and success in her new road, in her new role. That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Langenfeld, thank you for your kind comments for both departing individuals. Chief, would you like to respond? Mr. Langenfeld talked about the release of a procedure specifically. Did you want to respond to anything that Mr. Langenfeld said?
Yes, I will. And thanks, Mr. Chris, for your comments here today. I can tell you that, I mean, as part of, you know, the 81 recommendations and specifically recommendation 36, we're making every effort to look at all of our procedures to release them. As Myron mentioned today, we're going to be doing our crime management one. And I can tell you that later today, procedure 1104 should be posted by later today, if it isn't already as well. We've made the redactions on that procedure, and that is ready to go. And we're going to continue to do that. I mean, we started with the use of force procedure because that was part of recommendation 35. We did the body-worn camera because I felt that was important given the new technology and the new tools that we were using for public confidence. And we're going to continue to release these procedures as we go forward. So I actually really appreciate your comments this afternoon. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Board members, any questions, Mr. Langenfeld? Seeing none, Mr. Langenfeld, thank you once again.
Thank you.
Board members, item number 13, the annual report 2021 filing of Toronto Police Service procedures. Can I have a motion to receive item number 13? Vice Chair, seconder. Ms. Kostakis, all in favor? Any opposed? Item number 13 carries. We're now on to item number 14, which is the annual report 2020 activities and expenditures of community consultative groups. I believe we have two deputants. We had one written only from Nicole Corrado. I want to thank her for a written deputation. And Doobie, when you're ready, can you put on the first deputant, please?
Yes, Chair. Chidi Mamyanwo, you should receive the prompt now in the system.
Hello, my name is Dr. Chidi Mamyanwo. I'm a member of the Black Consultative Committee of the Toronto Police. On March 23rd, 2018, the Black community witnessed a very terrible incident, and especially in my immediate community, which is the Nigerian community, when we lost Engineer Nnamdi Oba. And we held a vigil for him on this March 23rd, 2018. And Mayor Torre was there at that event. And then I was the president of the Nigerian Canadian Association. And even now, acting as the CEO of My Roots Foundation and a member of the BCCC, I can tell you that from that day, many other cases of gun violence has increased, both in my immediate Nigerian community and in the larger Black community as a whole. And also there's been many cases of mental health I'm sorry for the shake in my voice. It's just because I'm full of emotions and all kinds of things that I'm trying to handle at the same time. I've been on the table of the BCC for more than 4 years now, and I can't place my hands on what we have achieved in all this time that I've been on the BCCC table. We are supposed to be a consultative committee, which is a committee that is supposed to feed back the Toronto police. And I don't understand. On this committee are community leaders who have enormous skills that I cannot begin to enumerate here. We know the community. We understand our people. And times without number, we have made presentations to the TPS. We have offered solutions. We have raised issues. And all we keep meeting is a brick wall. So I'm asking, what does the TPS actually want from the BCCC? I don't understand. Let me give you one clear example. When I saw your YouTube, when I logged into your YouTube and I saw the number was 50, and I shared the link on our social media, it just jumped up to 76, and after a little while it came down. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that you have people who are connected to platforms that you guys don't have access to, and yet you don't work with us. So it is very, very frustrating. I don't know how you would buy a car and you will still be trekking around on foot. What is the essence of buying the car? I don't get it. We have look at, you are having a meeting, a public meeting. I have just 49 people watching right now. Do you know the influence we have over the Black community, that if we were actually working together and you are really interested in communicating or reaching out to the public, you would have had like 1,000 people watching you. So the mere fact that the whole TPS is having this kind of session and you have 47 people watching, it's something for you to sit back and ponder over. So on one hand, you have reached out to us to be the link between you and our community. But then we come back to you and you don't want to use the feedback that we give you. All we see is you creating more and more tables. We're not interested in, let me just give you a feedback. Our people are not interested in those tables. Those data that you see being collected, as far as we are concerned, it's just an academic exercise. Look at when you do your pre-COVID times, when you did your meetings, or the town hall meetings. You have confessed that people don't come to these meetings. Well, guess what? Ask us and we will tell you. And this thing about tokenism, where you pick and choose the people that you want to work with. So you engage them in all these initiatives and all of that, and then you come back and you publish the successes. Well, guess what? We go into our communities and people don't feel these things. So we're wondering, who are these people you're working with? Because we don't see them, we don't know them in our communities. Honestly, I don't want to sound like somebody who is, they've come again with their aggression and they're shouting and things like that. But if you've not heard any other thing that I've said today, this I want you to understand, that the Black community, the African community, we are very, very frustrated. If you do not need tables like the Black Community Consultative Committee, then just let us be. Scrap it. I want to let you. Thank you.
Sorry, I have to wrap you up. You're at 5 minutes and 45 seconds. I've let you go well over. Really appreciate your comments, though, and I want to put your comments over to the chief or perhaps Deputy Ewan to comment specifically on some of the things you said, like lack of achievement of your group, the BCCC. So, Deputy Ewan or Chief, could you speak to that, please?
Yeah, Chair, I'll let Deputy Ewan speak to it.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chidi. Chair, the Black CCC has been revolving, and we have put in a new uniform co-chair, Staff Superintendent Barkley, and we have looked at the membership, and then we're ensuring that it does represent all segments of the Black communities, not only a singular lens. So we have our Medenta mothers, and we have representatives from Regent Park, representatives from all across the city, and certainly what Chidi has brought to the meeting. We'll continue listening, and we're looking at and actually we are now engaged in a number of initiatives, and most recently we link up the Black CCC with our PCERT and to do our comprehensive engagement piece with the community, and also the Lawrence Heights project, where Mr. Mayor, you've been deeply involved with Councilor Michael Cole. We engage a Black CCC member that lives in the community to come up with the operational plan, working with the city, SafeTO. And the last 2 weeks, we had meetings with the city, the community safety unit, where they hosted 4 town hall meetings across city, and the Black CCC were fully engaged. We are listening. Can we do better? Obviously, there were gaps, and that's why the new leadership in charge, not in charge, working with the Black CCC with Superintendent Khan and Staff Superintendent Barkley, and I'm confident that we can move in a much more positive direction.
Can I comment to that?
Sure, go ahead.
You see, this is exactly what we're talking about. I actually feel, and I hope Sarah Ali, who is the co-chair of the BCC, is still on the line. It's almost ridiculous for me to sit here, and I want to be as polite as I can. And I hear talk about, oh, BCC is well represented. I wish the co-chair of BCC, who is in this meeting, could speak up and collaborate this. You see, and I'm being very, very cautious. You don't have to pick one person, like you said, and work with them, and that person represents all of us. You need to ask across board to be able to understand how we are feeling and what we're saying as a BCCC. I don't want to go further on that, but it would almost be like you are verifying what I said about tokenism. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of the deputy? Seeing none, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today. We really appreciate it. Maybe can you put on the next deputant, please?
Thank you.
The next deputant is Derek. Derek, you should receive a prompt in the system. Very good.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead when you're ready.
I'm just going to start my timer here. So I just want to start off by saying that I second Chris Langenfeld for what he said. I do acknowledge that the Toronto Police, the past 2 weeks, have, I guess, just acted normal towards the peaceful protesters down there. The question is, though, is what's going to happen if Premier Ford signs one of those magic statutory stay-at-home orders because of these boogeymen variants of concern? What happens then? And I just want to point out that Chris Langenfeld has been bonding the last couple of days on Twitter with a good friend of Mayor Tory's, a guy named George Sawision, Sawision. I just want to say, by me speaking at this meeting, this shall not be deemed to be in any way my consent expressed or implied. In doing so, is fraud. God bless Her Majesty the Queen, and long live Her Majesty the Queen. And after what happened to Chris Sky at his home last week, let the record show his common nuisance in the criminal code applies to a person and or everyone. If I have ever led the Toronto Police Services and or this board to believe in any way that I am Her Majesty and an organization, then that would be a mistake, and that I ask all of you to please forgive me. So in this report it says, the community consultative process is meant to establish a process that affords opportunities for enhanced community safety through community-based activities and leadership, the mutual exchange of information, and the development of joint problem-solving initiatives. And I just realized that I've never been able to have a one-on-one conversation with Chief Raymer yet. And if you've seen my written presentation, I have a screenshot which reviewed. I mean, I got to speak one-on-one with Mark Saunders when he was chief. I've talked about it the second time at Barbara from Library. The first time was soon after he became chief at a 53 Division town hall meeting. And, you know, when you get to speak to police officers one-on-one, you know, you get to kind of know them, and you get to hear things. They'll say things out loud that you wouldn't normally hear them say. So, like, I just want to review. The guy who was holding the microphone was Officer Alex Lee, and Chief Saunders wanted him to speak to me afterwards. So it was in regards to, like, I spoke to Chief Mark Saunders. You know, if in the future anyone from the city of Toronto tries to defraud my father, like, what should I do about it? And Chief Saunders at the time and Alex Officer Lee told me to just walk into 53 Division and ask to speak to someone from our fraud department. Another thing Mark Saunders said was, don't ever be afraid to call us. That's nice to hear out loud. And the guy who was running 53 Division at the time was Unit Commander Scott Gilbert. I think the new guy is Sean Nairn. And Scott Gilbert said, give us a call if you ever feel someone has broken the law and done something wrong. And we can help you. We won't say no, which was rather reassuring and comforting to hear. So also in this report, it says 51 Division Community Police Liaison Committee initiative working on how to report on crime, which is ironic, not just because of what I had to say during item number 1, but you've heard me, Chair Hart, mention Officer Eustace before, who agreed with me that it would be fraud to go around charging people with laws that didn't actually apply to them. Well, the reason I went into 53's Division in the first place was to ask about how exactly does one go about making a complaint to the police, just like we spoke about during item number 1, Chair Hart. And I would love now, after having our first dust up together, Chair Hart, to hear a presentation next month from someone there at the Toronto Police to go over with the public on how one exactly makes a complaint to the police. Because when I spoke about this with Officer Eustace, like, what exactly is the process, I kind of stumped him. Like, he didn't really know what to say. He just kind of like, well, you just come in here and talk to someone. I'm like, well, who exactly do you talk to? And he'd say, well, whoever's on call. So I'd like to see or hear a presentation about that at a future board meeting. For example, in the criminal code, section 122 is breach of trust by public officer. Section 336 is criminal breach of trust. Breach of trust is defined in Black's Law as a trustee's violation of either the trust terms or the trustee's general fiduciary obligations. And I just had a quick question for Chief Raymer before my time runs out, and that was, is it true, because there's a lot of rumors swirling about this on social media, is it true that Dr. Davila's husband was recently arrested by the Toronto Police? And that's my time.
Thank you, Derek. You got that in right at the end before I could stop you, I see. Okay. Board members, any questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Derek. Hey, board members, any questions on the report?
Mr. Chair.
Vice Chair, go right ahead.
Yeah, just a question. So as far as the deputation that was made by VCC, we are allocating $1,000. That's part of the budget, right? We're not taking money away from the budget.
That's correct.
Okay. I just wanted to confirm that. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, board members? Seeing none, anybody wish to speak to this item? Could I have a motion to receive item number 14? Vice Chair, seconded by Ms. Kostakis. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Now we're moving forward to item number 15, which is our last item on the agenda. It is Annual Report 2020 Secondary Activities. And Mr. Morgan, you've held it down.
Thank you, Chair Hart. I just a point of clarification for myself. I know that of the 25 applicants, 4 were declined, were not approved. So I'm just wondering, why they were not approved. So that's one. And then Is there an actual, actually it's more than two questions. Is there an actual appeal process for those that is there built-in sort of an appeal process? And I guess just another point of clarification in terms of, it states that members that are looking for secondary activities, they only have to seek approval if they feel that it might be a conflict. So I'm wondering if there's a reason why the onus is left upon the member to make a determination if there's a conflict, as opposed to just having all applications for activities come to a body that makes that determination, and rather than the member making that determination if there's a conflict before they bring it forward.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Chief, I'll pass that over to you or whoever you wish to answer those questions.
Okay, well, I'll just start simply by answering the one question that there is no process for an appeal or a denial currently as exists in the Police Services Act. But I will ask Deputy Coxon to speak to this in greater detail in terms of the other questions.
Thank you. So although there's no set way to appeal under the Police Services Act, the member can, and we've had them do this, put an official internal memo up the chain of command to appeal why they think it may not be a conflict. The reason that the onus is on the member is that there's lots of things that members can do that are not a conflict. For example, we have lots of members who teach part-time at a college, that kind of thing, right? And there's precedence for that. So really the onus is when there is a conflict of interest, because we as an organization don't know what it is the member's doing. Sometimes we don't know what is entailed in terms of the secondary activity, in terms of their role in whatever it is that they're doing, their role in the organization. So it really is, from an integrity standpoint, on the member to apply if they think there's a conflict. And that's to satisfy Section 49.1 under the Police Services Act. So I hope I've answered all your questions. Have I missed anything?
No, that does answer the question. I'm just wondering if given the fact that the onus is on the member, if that's ever been an issue in terms of what they may deem. I guess it just, to me, if it seems a little bit potentially could be problematic if someone may feel that what they're doing is okay, but it may not necessarily be so for the service. But if it's never really brought forward, regardless of what the activity is, then how would the service really know what's happening without the member actually acknowledging it?
Thank you. You're absolutely correct. And a lot of these come to light, when there is a conflict through a professional standards investigation where the conflict appears, right? But the reason the onus is on the member is the expectation is that the member is not doing anything other than working for the police service, because this is what's prescribed in the Police Services Act, unless they've asked permission. So if the member is uncertain, if it's a gray area or even an area, listen, even things like doing charity work, if the member thinks, we really should be talking to my boss, then the onus is on them to actually bring it forward. And the reason the onus is on the member is because the service has no idea what the member is doing outside of working hours. That's why.
Okay, thank you very much, Deputy Coxon. Thank you.
I'll just add there that we originally had our regulations you had to put in for every single thing that you were going to do as a part-time job, and that was, we were getting tons and tons of applications, and then it was the Police Association appealed this program that we had, and as a result of that appeal, we changed it to what we have currently, in terms of if you feel that it's a conflict, that you have to bring it forward.
Thank you, Chief.
Any further questions? Anyone wish to speak to this item? And I have a motion to receive item number 15. Motion to receive. Vice Chair, seconder. Ms. Kostakis, all in favor? Any opposed? Item number 15 carries. That brings us to the end of our public agenda, and I have a motion to adjourn. Ms. Kostakis, seconder. Mayor Tory, all in favor? We stand adjourned. Our next public meeting will be on April the 22nd, 2021. See you all later. Thank you.